Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le Sénateur Gorst.
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le Sénateur Ferguson.
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Lafondre.
Présent.
Madame le Sénateur Valois.
Présente.
Madame le Sénateur Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le Sénateur Pallet. Monsieur le Sénateur Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Gruville.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Sainte-Bonne. Madame le Connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Madame le Député Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Southern. Madame le Député de Gruville.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Lewis.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Tadier. Monsieur le Député Higgins.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Masson. Madame le Député Pinal.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Martin. Monsieur le Député de Sainte-Bonne.
Présent.
Madame le Député Dublé. Monsieur le Député Labbé.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Wickenden.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Truscott.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Young. Monsieur le Député Ash.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Morel.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Guida.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Madame le Député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Ayer. Madame le Député Pershaw.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le Député Alves.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Pamplin.
Présent.
Madame le Député Gardner.
Présente.
Madame le greffier.
Prions Dieu. Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et la puissance de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton Saint-Nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération étant accompagnée de ta bénédiction, réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple qui te plut de commettre le soin. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par la mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite dans la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous induis point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen. Monsieur le Sénateur Pallet.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Southern.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Tadier. Monsieur le Député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Masson.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Monsieur le Député Masson est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Madame le Député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Ayer.
Présent.
Les États sont constitués. Last night I was asked to rule on a procedural matter which I did by email communication to all members, but as indicated I would publicly announce the ruling so that it was understood and on the record. I was asked to rule on whether the adoption of the 6th Amendment precludes debate on the 8th Amendment, having regard in particular to Standing Order 20, the relevant part of which says a proposition cannot be in the same or substantially the same terms as a proposition which the states have previously debated and voted upon unless at least 3 months have elapsed since that vote. It is true that both amendments amend the same part of the draft Bridging Ireland Plan, namely Policy CI1, Education Facilities, at page 222. The 8th Amendment refers to specific premises to be added to a list of sites where development other than for the purposes of education will not be supported unless it can be demonstrated that they are no longer required for such purposes. Those premises are the Jersey gas site at Tunnel Street. The 6th Amendment is broader in scope and the relevant parts are A and B, which I do not propose to read out. The purpose of the 6th Amendment is to ensure that education needs are given the highest priority in respect of land which has been identified by the responsible minister for the purpose of the needs of primary schools in St Saviour and St Helier. The amendment only extends to land owned by states or states-owned companies. Furthermore, both A and B say that proposals for the redevelopment of such land, where it lies within the vicinity of existing primary schools, must be able to demonstrate that they will not compromise the ability to address identified education needs. The relevant minister has not, as I understand it, identified any publicly owned land for the purposes of additional needs of the primary school estate in St Helier, and, if he has not identified the premises in Tunnel Street. Furthermore, those premises cannot be regarded as being within the vicinity of an existing primary school in St Helier. Neither A or B of the 6th Amendment identify specific premises. Accordingly, there is no overlap with the premises which are the subject of the 8th Amendment, and that amendment may be debated regardless of the outcome of the debate on the 6th Amendment. Further, if the Tunnel Street premises are not currently publicly owned, then there can be no overlap in any event. The 6th Amendment only affects publicly owned land. So we now return to the debate on the 6th Amendment. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? If no member wishes to speak, then I call upon the proposer, Deputy Gardner, to reply. Deputy.
Well, thank you. I didn't expect this, I have to be honest. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank members who contributed for this debate. And words are matter, as they do. And this amendment allowing to bring education considerations as part of the decision-making process. When the minister mentioned the overall capacity on the islands, last night, I was thinking, well, it means that we will not develop anything, we will not plan anything, we will not consider education a state because it's not part of the Bridging Ireland Plan until they got up to capacity across the all parishes and will continue to drive children around the parishes. And I think it's wrong. We need to think in advance. We need to think in the future, to the future. Another thing that was mentioned, it's for the 3 years of Bridging Ireland Plan. I would like members to reflect. During the last 4 years that we are in this assembly, what has been done for the education estate in St. Helier and St. Sevier? If any of the members will tell we've done this over the last 4 years, we have extra play space, we have modern buildings, we have this, or we made the decision that in the next 2 years, the new school, which answering modern standard, will be built in urban or suburban areas. So 3 years. I think what this amendment actually given, and I'm grateful for Senator Mazza, Deputy War Constable St. Helier, Deputy of St. Mary, that clearly recognize that this amendment simply asking to take into consideration needs of education estate. And I would urge Deputy Ash to reflect on this, because in the future we need to avoid situations what happened in St. Clements, where the houses were built but we don't have spaces in school and children need to travel. So we really need to think, it's not, I am advocate for free market forces finding natural solutions to our problems, and this is the reason that I didn't include private developments. But what I'm asking, before we continue to build on public-owned land, if it's state-owned land or a state-owned organization, to have a consideration. And holistically is a great word, as this is all about words. Again, I agree with the housing minister, and we have to look into holistically, and we must consult Andium, SOJDC, and I think his argument to vote against this amendment is actually an argument to vote for this amendment, because they were not consulted. I'm not sure how members had time to read the two recently published PAC reports, and I will not go into the PAC report, but one of them was about estate management, and one of the kind is clearly stated: the continued piecemeal approach to engaging with state-owned entities and arm's length organization in terms of development and implementing a cohesive and comprehensive estate strategy linked to the overall corporate objective is not working. The estate strategy was published without including state-owned companies in the estate strategy. It's how we are working, not holistically. When planning minister saying, oh, it's not for the planning to think about education estate, we need to think about the planning. And housing minister saying, we will build houses, but I will not speak with the education minister. And when I'm coming to Jersey Property Holding, and I'm asking Jersey Property Holding, so where we are building school in St. Helier, they're saying, it's not us, it's an education, they didn't do their job. What this amendment simply asking that for ministers with all stakeholders will be obliged to sit in one room and to consider all necessary needs. Housing, schools can be community hubs. Community hubs, a school can use some of the parks safeguarded during the day and open for the public during the afternoon. There are lots of solutions that can be found. The only way to do this is to sit together, which didn't happen. And what I'm trying to do, it's not to restrict, it's not to block, it's maybe enforce, and I wish I wouldn't need to do this, but the experience happened, to ensure that it's not anti-construction, it's not anti-free market, they are sitting together and allowing next government actually say, we cannot point to each other as the ministers. We need that education minister, infrastructure minister, planning minister, and housing minister will be in one room and will decide how this or that site will be developed. And all state-owned companies will be consulted. They have great knowledge and they have to be part of this conversation. So this amendment asking for consideration in 3 policies: education estate, town center, and local centers. Please, I urge members not just talk, we need to be sure that we have provisions to develop our island holistically. And I'm asking for the appel.
Thank you, Deputy.
Sir, point of clarification.
Forgive me?
Sir,
Point of clarification, please, sir.
Yes, point of clarification. Will you accept a point of clarification, Deputy?
Yes.
And
Thank
the
you.
first one from the Chief Minister.
mine's very minor. Would the rapporteur consider taking the vote in 3 parts rather than en bloc, sir?
That's a matter for her. She'll come back. Do you want to take it in 3 parts or one part?
No.
1 part.
One part, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Deputy Morel.
Yeah, thank you. Point of clarification. In the deputy's speech, she referred to speaking with other ministers, speaking with the education minister. I was wondering, had Deputy Gardner spoken to the education minister herself, and did he take part in this debate?
I was surprised that the Education Minister didn't take part of this debate. Personally, I have on almost monthly basis engaged with the Education Minister in the private conversation, sending emails. I went to the press. I think since, probably May last year, we have this engagement. And I'm not sure why the review hasn't been published. We will be in different places, but it didn't happen. And we need to make sure that we have some framework in place for the future for the years.
Thank you. The appel is being called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. Those joining the meeting in the Teams link are asked to cast their votes on the chat channel, and I ask the greffier to open the voting for members in the chamber. If all members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, then ask the greffier to close the voting. And I can announce that the amendment has been adopted. 38 votes for and 9 votes contra.
The 9, please.
Yes.
Those voting contra in the chat, the Connétable of St Helier, the Deputy of Grouville, Deputy Ash, and then in the chamber, Deputies Martin, St Juan, Young, Guida, and Ayer.
First of all, I would like to thank members. And so, can I raise something with the Environment Minister, please, as a request? Not according to my amendment, but I would like to raise something in the Assembly before we move to the next item.
Yes.
Would it be possible from the Environment Minister team or from the GRAF to have all fields that we passed for development in one list, as public also contacted me and requested to be circulated between the members and maybe published, that we can consider before the final debate what's final version of the fields.
Yes, so that's a very helpful suggestion. I'm sure that will be done. Will it be done, Minister?
Yes, I think there's 1 or 2 propositions still to come which may, not on housing, I don't think, but when we got to the point where we can produce a definitive list, sir, that will be published and made public. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. We now move to the 8th Amendment, lodged by Deputy Ward, and ask the greffier to read the amendment.
After the words "the Draft Island Plan 2022 to 25," insert the words "except that." A. Within policy CI1, after the words "part of field 782 St 1," there should be inserted a new bullet point, Jersey Gas Site, Tunnel Street, St Helier. B. The Draft Island Plan 2022 to 25 should be further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent upon the adoption of paragraph A. And C. The Draft Bridging Island Plan Proposals Map Part A, Planning Zones, should be amended to reflect the adoption of paragraph A.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to keep this short to begin with so we can have a debate. It has been accepted by the Minister, but the debate has been asked for. So this amendment proposes the safeguarding of a specific site for education facilities, thus preventing the development of that site for any alternative use. Subsequently, it means that the site cannot be used for housing development. And I'll make a few key points about that. So the development of a primary school would not mean a development of the site that was originally proposed by Andium. And this is what I've been looking at. This is the original proposition by Andium that was refused for planning. And you can see that there was a development of a significant number of homes and an extension to the park. These won't be there. And what I will say is that if you take just this section, you can see still a significant increase to the size of the park from those original plans. And taking that section is a significantly large site for a school, for a primary school. And so I've not just come to this thinking, well, that might be a nice little plan. I actually think so we can have the best of both worlds here if we plan it carefully. So the extension was widely supported by this Assembly, but I will say that when you look closely at that part, and the reason I talk about that so is there is a context to this. Very little of that development was actually for affordable housing, and we get back to that topic again. Most of it was for open market, so it would have done very little. And actually, sir, I was initially thought, the refusal of that is a bit of a nightmare, but actually, sir, it's probably a very good thing that's happened, and we have an opportunity now. So this proposition, if used to build a school, would also mean an increase in the size of the park, therefore, which is significantly higher than the increase in the park from those original plans. And those plans were accepted and voted for by this Assembly. And so therefore, we are seeing an increase in the park here. So this site is central to developments in a new area, none of which considered where children will be going to school. And that's just a second diagram. This is from the Andium current situation. And what you've got is all of the sites around here, the Mayfair, the Ann Street Brewery, the regeneration of the brewery site there, and all of these arrows going to the new park. So what I want members to think about is, if those arrows were going to the new park with a primary school at the end of that park, not only would you have children going to school in a green area, but you would have created, because of the work of Andium and the regeneration and the creation of walking pathways through that area, you will create a way for our children to walk to school through a green park into a green space, smack bang in the centre of St Helier. And to me, sir, the more I thought about this, and I've considered every angle, and I've spoken to colleagues, not just within Reform, but other colleagues as well, sat here, had discussions, saying, look, am I thinking the right thing here? Tell me where I'm wrong. And I can see, sir, a really good opportunity here. So the link to the regeneration of Ann Street is vital, and there is a walking pathway through. There is another diagram here. However, sir, that is now at reverse and upside down, so I'm not going to try and use the mouse on this diagram because it's all going to go wrong, and I've just realised my error here. But there is a pathway straight through to the park from the new regeneration area, a walkway that has been designed by Andium. And those homes in that area are going to have the opportunity to get to that park and subsequently, if built, a school. But I will make an important point here, sir. What this proposition does is say nothing other than a school will be built in this area. However, if other sites come through from the school sites review, which I've got to say again, we have not seen, and it's clear that the housing minister seems to have said that he hasn't seen it, sir, and the environment minister seems to say that he hasn't seen it, sir. So none of us have seen it. But if they come up with other sites that are more appropriate for schools, it will get my support, and then we will have a park. All of it can be made to parkland. What this proposition is saying is do not build homes. There is no more room for homes in that area. And I think it's vital that as an assembly, we put a line in the sand when it comes to that area of St Helier. I do recognise the problem for the Environment Minister, and actually I'm pleased that he's changed his mind and accepted this. And I do recognise the problem that perhaps the Constable of St Helier has in saying, look, we want this simply to be a park. But, sir, we have not seen the school sites review, and we are not considering the schooling of our children in that area. What I suggest to members is that they go to the schools in St Helier, and I know many members have, particularly St Helier members. So I go to Springfield every week for the ECOF programme, and I do an hour's reading every week. I've done it for the last few years, not something I mentioned politically, but it's important because I go into Springfield every week, and I witness the miracles that those staff are working in the facilities that they have, and that those children are dealing with. A concrete playground, a very small space of greenery. And so the head of the school, and he's not actively trying to promote anything here, but I know, so I can speak because I represent people. Outside the school, they've had an issue, sir, with traffic, and it's really dangerous for the children crossing the road. And nothing's going to happen there for a year or so, we've been told, because the people who might be able to do something are really quite busy. So again, we're not prioritising our schools. And so we have a school there where the staff are working their socks off. The students are fantastic and working their socks off. Parents and support workers and everyone there is trying to do the very best for those children in the wrong facilities. And there is an opportunity here for us to say, right, during this island plan, we are going to say that that big area in the middle of St Helier, we can extend the park, we can put a school right on the edge of that park, and we can have our children avoiding that danger of the road, being in a green space, and having space to play. That, sir, is putting children first, and it's a no-brainer. There is also an issue, sir, which worries me. I would say extend the park if there were other school sites. Fantastic. But I am concerned, in the back of my mind, and I'd be interested to see other members' views on this, that by extending the park the way we have, it has given an opportunity for developments to happen. To say, look, we can develop in this way, but don't worry about green space because they can just go across the road to the park. And around that area now, we have, of the number, I think it's 935 homes, units, call them what you will. I really dislike, sir, that word units, but I understand why it's used because I suppose that's what they are, with families in them. I know there are one-bedroom places, but there are people living there, and they don't have space. And I think what's happening, there is a real risk, particularly with the Bridging Island plan, in this opportunity for developers to say, well, actually, we can develop, but there's not really the space for green space here. So we have a little payoff, we'll develop space somewhere else for you, and that's the deal. Now, that space, unfortunately, if we're not careful, will become just that parkland. And that park is not that large for the development that's going on in that area. And so, sir, what we need to do when we consider our green space, and what I would suggest that we do, if this is accepted, is to look wider as to where that park space is. There's the notion of satellite parks or pocket parks. And I would go as far as to suggest if the school is built and it's Springfield that is repositioned into that school, because it could be a much larger school, so that Springfield area isn't just more housing crammed in there, but we create a pocket park for that area of town and change the nature of it with creativity so that the people in the Coy estate and the estates around there have got a green space right next to them to go to. That's the way to create green space in the centre of town. Not just concentrate in one area of the park, but to actually pocket it around town. If you go to cities around the world, much bigger than ours, that's what happens. I grew up in London, and there are beautiful small parks all over the place there. And there was just space and room to breathe in that huge metropolis. And I'll finish soon and let people debate this, but I wonder why it's taken so long to consider a wider development in town. And so we've had so many regeneration groups, north of town, south of town, middle of town, east of town, west of town. I don't know how many regeneration groups are under town, overground. And so I won't finish that one off, so I don't know if it's unparliamentary. So we've had so many, in fact, sir, we've had so many visions. I did think perhaps I should consult the Dean here, because there's been vision after vision in St Helier for what's going on, and more visions to come. But what we actually need is some decisions and some action to be taken. And what I'm proposing here today is what we do. We take an action and say, right, this area we are not going to build on. We need a school. We will identify it as a school space. And if the school sites review does not come up with the goods, we have got a reserve in place. That, sir, is pragmatic, it's practical, and is doable. And I'll leave it at that, sir, and I urge members to support this amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Is amendment seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Connétable St Helier.
Thank you, sir. Can I start off by saying that I understand and share the frustration of both Deputy Ward in this amendment and Deputy Gardner in her amendment over the state's failure to act to alleviate the problems of Rouge-Bouillon School. More recent members of the Assembly may not realise that years ago the school was promised room to grow once the relocation of the States of Jersey police headquarters took place. The police station duly moved to the other side of the tunnel in what I still think is a splendid building. Not everyone agrees with that. And I think we waited to see what Education and Home Affairs would do to allow Rouge-Bouillon to expand. And then, lo and behold, the blue police signs outside the police station were changed to red signs. And the fire service expanded into the space that the police service had left. At the same time, it became very clear talking to ministers that there was no intention to relocate the emergency services, which was going to be necessary to allow the school to develop into that part of northern St Helier, which is where it gets a lot of its students from. And where there was, we've always talked about, and we've had promised in countless questions, the opportunity not only to grow the space for Rouge-Bouillon School, but to have some car parking for residents and some green space as well. But that didn't happen, and ministers closed ranks. And so the problem of Rouge-Bouillon School's improvement was simply kicked down the road. And I give that history to members because I think it's relevant, and people need to remember that it's always been accepted that there is space for Rouge-Bouillon to grow, and that space is on the town side of its current premises. So members can be forgiven for not having read my proposition on extending the Millennium Town Park, P67, which was due for debate at the last sitting of this Assembly, but which will now fall away if this amendment is approved. But members will, however, I hope, have seen Andium's Town Park vision in the media, and certainly since lodging P67, I've had lots of town residents, particularly people who live around the park, of course, telling me how excited they are about the prospect of the town park being doubled in size. One of them offered to get a petition started. And I said, well, we've got this debate coming up this week, so it's probably a bit late for a petition. But there is real excitement. And I've been speaking particularly to mums and dads with children. And I'd remind members that children need space. They need open space, not just when they're at school, but preschool children need open space. And children who've left primary school need open space. People need open space as well outside the school day. And one of the problems about placing a primary school on this site is that it will effectively seal off, because schools have to be sealed off for the safety of students. It will seal off a part of the park, and I'll return to the size of that part in a moment. But it will be sealed off from the use of the public, and not just from you and me, sir, but it will be sealed off from the use of children. It will effectively be neutralised, except insofar as some classes and activities may take place in the evenings at weekends. So, sir, Deputy Ward, in his proposition, he talked about the school being, if it has to come here, being, and I quote, right on the edge of the park, end quote. And that's quite a seductive proposition, this idea that we can have a school and have a park extension. And he made something of this, although he did then concede, and I quote, the park is not that large, end quote. And it is a fact that the current Millennium Town Park, which residents and islanders campaigned for many years to deliver, following the petition of more than 16,000 signatures that I presented to the States 20 years ago. It is a fact that the Millennium Town Park is really small, and anyone who's visited it in the summer will know that there is barely room to swing a cat, let alone to swing a child around or do anything meaningful in terms of exercise. And in his speech, Deputy Ward went on to talk about pocket parks being the way forward. And I'm afraid that that's actually not the case. It is true that places like London and large cities do have pocket parks, and indeed St Helier has quite a few pocket parks as well. But pocket parks aren't the same as the kind of parks of such size that our children can come back from a run out of breath. And the vision of Andiam Homes is to create a significant area of open space with grass and trees and water features and facilities for children to play. And it will be the sort of park that will begin to resemble the major town parks of European towns and cities. But I'm afraid, sir, if a school is allowed to take possibly a third of that space, we don't know yet how much it would be, then we're not going to get that sort of park. We're going to get a compromise. And while compromise may be something we should always be ready to do, I believe that we have an opportunity here to do better than that. And I would remind the many members in this long debate who've spoken about Andiam Homes and have said what a great job Andiam Homes are doing. This is not my vision, sir. This is the vision of Andiam Homes. This is the vision of the social housing provider that members have been so respectful of. And it seems to me that if we're going to commend Andiam Homes for their work in improving our housing stock and adding to it, then we have to give some credence to the fact that Andiam Homes believe that this site should not be used for anything other than extending the park. I went to see them about the possibility of keeping the Jersey Gas showroom as a youth centre, because I understood there might be difficulties with the youth centre they were proposing as part of the Jersey Brewery site. And they said, well, yes, you could leave the Jersey Gas showroom there, but it would seriously compromise the extent of the park. So I think members have to accept this. They can't have their cake and eat it. They can either view this piece of land as a windfall site, which could be used for a primary school, it could be used for emergency services, it could have any number of uses. It could be used for a big community hall that St Helier lacks. But Andiam Homes' vision is to extend the town park across its whole extent. And as members are not going to have the opportunity, unless they reject this amendment, of debating Project 67, so I'm now going to make a few references. I'm going to dip my toe into the project, if I may. And first of all, I'm going to read the executive summary, which I placed at the beginning of Project 67, because I thought it was a good idea to make the point fairly simply at the beginning. And I quote from the beginning of the project. There has been a growing appreciation, especially in the years since the millennium, of the importance of amenity space in the island's main town. And last year it was proposed by Andiam Homes that the site of the former Jersey Gas Company which had long been proposed for housing, should instead be used to double the size of the park with no other buildings upon it. Andian's vision mirrors that of the early campaigners for the creation of the Millennium Town Park, and it offers the island its one and only chance to create a park of significant size in the heart of a growing capital, which, if achieved, will maximise the benefit of the park for the community, especially for children, and which will, in decades to come, be regarded as the most important action towards urban regeneration taken by Jersey's government. As the parishes of St Helier and St Saviour are increasingly being asked to take responsibility for the thousands of new homes required in Jersey, it seems only right that the quantum of such critical infrastructure as parkland be increased, and that the unique and visionary opportunity offered to the island by Andian Homes be supported by the State's Assembly. I could have used that, sir, as my final remarks in my contribution to this debate, but I want instead to look further into P67, where I referred to a recent, I say recent, it was 7 years ago, a recent attempt to extend the town park, and it was as part of an amendment to the strategic plan of 2015, in which I asked the states to agree that if housing wasn't going to go on the site, then it be used for open space. And there was considerable support from members of the Assembly. I'm just going to quote from a couple of the contributions. Former Deputy Jackie Hilton referred to the original vision of the proposers of the town park, and she said, and I quote, "Standing outside the Odeon Cinema, looking down the park, right through to St Saviour's Road, a completely large, unhindered space by development for the people of St Helier." End quote. And the idea was also supported by St Saviour deputies, as you would expect, and I've already referred to that parish. Former Deputy McClinton shared his vision, and I quote, "where the town park does indeed stretch the entire distance and is filled with happy children playing, people walking, having picnics. Inasmuch as I understand the cost of the project, I would not one day in 25 years' time, maybe, be there with my grandchildren and stare at the buildings that have blocked this amazing park and regret the missed opportunity that we had to put this wonderful park and make it stretch right through." And then the final quote is from Deputy Dublé, who reminded the states, "We have signed up to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and Article 3 says that we have to think about the best interests of children when we're making policies. So I will fight any way I can to get an extension to the town park, because the children that live around that area in St Helier and St Saviour are being denied their rights. Article 31 says that children have a right to relax and play." End quote. And those are just some of the contributions in that debate in 2015. So it's not a new idea of making a much bigger town park. And it is one that does indeed put children first. And it puts them first not only, as I say, when they're at school, but when they're out of school, at weekends. And of course it also benefits the every age group who lives in town. And I think, we clearly need to remember that we've talked a lot about the loading of town with all these units that are being promised. And I think the problem is that if we don't deliver the town park of Andian's vision, if we compromise it with buildings upon it, then it is going to have a knock-on effect on how many other units can be provided. I will certainly not be nearly as supportive as I have been in the past of continuing to put housing in this part of town if the States doesn't support the idea of a proper town park. So this regeneration project is simply too important to be buried in this long island plan debate. Members will know that I'm passionate about parks, open space, green space, and that's why I've opposed so vigorously building on People's Park, even though the new hospital had a good claim to be that important. And so I will continue to seek to protect St Helier's parks as long as I'm in the Assembly, and not only to protect the green spaces that we have and to improve their quality, but to increase the quantity of parkland in Jersey's capital, because that's the only way it will keep pace growing population. And so I see this as but the first skirmish in the latest battle to maximise the size of the town park. It's been going on for some time. If this amendment is successful, it will clearly become a big election issue in that part of St Helier, and I will certainly be campaigning with all my might with the residents of Chevalier Road, in Apsley Road, in Oxford Road, in Tunnel Street, and in St Mark's Road, and all the roads around the town park, who are so passionate as I am about the town park, that there is still an opportunity to double its size. So if it's lost today, sir, I will, if re-elected, come back to the next assembly with a rescindment motion, and I will have that debate on P67, which unfortunately I'm not going to be able to have unless this amendment is rejected, which I urge members to do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Conor Tarb. Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. My constable is actually a very good man with words. He is a poet, and he writes good prose too. And when he talks about a vision, I feel quite inspired by it. But the fact is that it's not a vision that we want. We have a vision there now. We have a park with the blossom just coming out now. Go there this lunchtime and have a look. Take it in. It's a beautiful space. It came about not because somebody had a vision. It came about because somebody found £10 million, put it in the pot, and then said, right, now create your park. There's the funding. What we've got now, instead of this false dichotomy that the constable is proposing, saying it's either open space, green park, or it's school, no, it's not. That's a false dichotomy. And the constable knows it. Because what we're proposing here, the Andean vision, let's just think about that for a minute. The Andean vision is this. Andean will give you a vision for whatever it is that you wish to do. As politicians, if you come along and say, I want more space there, Andean will give you a vision of how it might look. You want to say, you want less space there, you want housing there, you want a school there, Andean will show you how it might look. They will have a vision. They'll have a vision in response to what politicians ask. That's what they're there for, and they do it very well. So the vision, the Andean vision, is, if you like, whatever you say it is. Andean, give us a vision for this. So all the options are possible. But the key element here is that it's not school versus park. It's school plus park. School, 1/3 of the new space. Space, green park, has 2/3. So when we talk about my voters in St Helier Central, I must keep practicing saying St Helier Central, in number 2 district and the rest, once they know that this park will be increased and they have a school you can walk safely to in a beautiful green space, then of course they'll be in favour of that. Because that's not only something we can deliver, it's the best way forward. To keep harking back, and I will say this, to keep harking back to a perfect vision that we've seen sometime in the past, and this we're talking about nearly 20 years. Most of you weren't here. One or two of us were here. 20-year-old vision that said the park must go all the way across. £10 million didn't let it go all the way across. £10 million only got that far. But this proposal today says the vision is that we will build on that space and we will create a good park and we can do that. The constable, actually, I have a reputation for being a bit negative. But the constable, if you look at his record, is often negative. What he does, he looks for the perfect plan, which ruins the good plan. Time and time again. We can't have that because this is not perfect. It's time to say, enough of that mentality, enough of that philosophy that says we can't move, we can't act, we can't make a decision. We can. We have the opportunity today. We can do it, and we can still have both. We can have our cake and eat it. Never thought I'd quote Boris, but here I am. We can have our cake and eat it. We can have an expanded park, and we can have a school on this site. Apologies to Boris, but there it is. And I shan't be eating the cake because I obviously have to keep my figure. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Thank you, sir. Very passionate debate. Unfortunately, I fear not a necessary one, because I think the point I'd like to make, having looked through the island plan and looked at this carefully, the policy CI6, which is another policy in this plan, not this one that we're debating now, already safeguards this site for a park. And the reason for that is that the states have passed a proposition back in 2017. P114 2017, if you want to have a look. What that says is that actually, it's quite a complex proposition. I've had to look it up way before my time, I wasn't in the States then. A housing development with an underground park, underground car park, and a park on top of some of the land. Now, of course, that hasn't happened. Why hasn't it happened? Well, things change. Now, so what the island plan that we're debating here today has got a policy of CI6 that maintains that safeguarding, and Deputy Ward has brought in another proposition to amend it to include safeguarding for a school. Now, because you safeguard a school does not make a decision that it should be. It does not, as the CONITAB says, prevent it happening. Now, maybe it might, we didn't have an amendment for the constable because we've already got it for the park. So I don't see that the effect of this proposition is to bomb out the safeguarding on the park already. And of course, my feelings that we've not handled these property decisions terribly well. And the notion that we here are in a position to make that judgment of which it should be on the information we've got available is ridiculous. We don't. We don't even have a statement from our children's minister, our education minister, that tells us what we need. And of course, that is what in the Deputy Gardener's proposition we've just agreed to do. We don't have that. That's a preemption. We have a statement of what the needs. Now, we all know there is a need there. We all know there's a need. We all know there's a need for a park. The CONITAB has got a proposition down, which we're going to debate in a couple of weeks, and he'll be able to make his detailed case, and states members will decide. And my guess would be is that if the states do approve the CONITAB's proposition in a couple of weeks, then I think that will potentially allow a decision to depart from this particular safeguarding policy under CI1. So that is, now why did I put accept? Well, on the 1st of March, we heard in Hansard, we heard from the housing minister that he's heard that SIPE's a preferred option for the school was this site. Now, members said in the questioning, are you sure? Are you right? And we got confirmation, which it was, absolute. So, on that basis, when I was going through these propositions, I thought, well, Deputy Ward is proposing a safeguard, and of course it's been on the 1st of March, it was clearly reported to the states that that was the case. It's the only information I've got to go on. So therefore, my view is that I believe that members may not like this. Planning often delivers, or planning policies often deliver fairly messy solutions, but I believe we can support this one. It does not bomb out the town park. That's a decision down for later. And we have both two safeguardings in there for different purposes, and through decision-making processes, then both sides of the case have got to do their case. They've got to do their case together and get us a decent argument with the facts and information sufficient to make that decision. So I don't think we should wind ourselves up in a frazzle today and think we've got to make this choice. We don't, in my view. We should just accept this and move on and accept the fact that in the future we need to do much better about how we deal with our property decisions, sir. So that's my, I think that's probably all I need to say. And I hope that does, I hope members will accept what I have to say. Maybe, you know, if anybody doubts that I'm right, maybe they can ask the Attorney General or something. But that's the advice I've got from the officers. Safeguarding does not prevent a decision being taken to do something else, if there is a case and the need is justified. The planning system provides for that. Thank you, sir.
Minister, will you accept a point of clarification from Conor Iverson-Hellier?
Of course, sir, absolutely.
Yes, Conor Iverson-Hellier.
I'm grateful, sir. The Minister said a few moments ago that I had a proposition down which will be debated at the end of the session. Could he confirm that, in fact, if this amendment is accepted, my proposition, P67, will fall away and therefore won't be able to be debated by this government?
Well, sir, I apologise. I haven't got the proposition in front of me and the wording of it. But is that proposition on the island plan? Because if it is, then probably and it talks about safeguarding in this policy. If that is down for debate on the island plan, sir, yes, it's probably a conflicting proposition. If it's down for debate on a separate occasion, sir. So, look, sir, I'm sorry, I don't have that proposition in front of me.
I can't tell you're correct. I've not looked at 67, but if it does fall foul of Standing Order 20, then it won't be debated at the next session. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Yes, Deputy Lewis, and then Conor Tubbs.
Thank you, sir. So I would be delighted if there was a primary school built on the end of the park. It's not my specialist area, education, obviously, but it's something that I would approve. The sight of a school on the wrong side of that particular road would fill me with dread. I know people will blame me for the amount of traffic, but that's the job. But I would like everyone to be in walking distance. In the near future, we'll be altering, which work has progressed already. Work has progressed, started on Midvale Road, making the pavements wider there. And it would be a nice walking route to a new school. If people could walk through town and drop their children off at a new primary school in the area, I'd be highly delighted. So we always will need experts from outside of the island, but the elephant in the room with all the things we've been doing this week regarding housing estates, schools, etc. The elephant in the room obviously is population. If we don't get a grip on that, then all we're doing is sucking in more and more people. We have to look after our resident island population that we have. And obviously, so it goes without saying that anything we say or do today cannot bind the hands of any future States Assembly, sir. I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Colin Tarbus and Brillard.
Thank you, sir. And listening to Deputy Southern's speech earlier reminds me of P135 of 2009 for those of us who were there, and will recall his proposition called the Millennium Town Park funding from the Stabilisation Fund, and that was the ring binder vote which created, or served to produce the finance which created the town park. And I was privileged, sir, to be in the ministerial seat at the time when it was constructed, and experience the remediation works which had to take place, which were significant to get it to where it is now. I don't know how much work has has been done to identify how much decontamination will be necessary on the site, which is being discussed at present. It was obviously a contentious debate at the time, sir, but I think with the passage of 12 years now, 13 almost, it has proved to be an outstanding success, the town park, and an extension to it will be much appreciated and much really necessary in that area of concentrated residential development. So having had the experience of planting the first trees with Deputy Lewis at the time, I feel that an extension needs to be prioritised at this point, notwithstanding the fact that I would support a school structure, but I don't feel the space available there is sufficient for what is being requested. So on this occasion, sir, I can't support this proposition. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Conrad Tarr. Deputy Wickenden.
Thank you, sir. I guess we're in the dichotomy of being a small island and having conflicting demands, certainly on a site like this. Sir, the way we need to move forward with schools in Jersey is trying to get to a better position of bigger schools that they're less expensive. And if we can take the Kennervay School, which Princess Anne said was one of the best public schools she has ever been to, and you can show exactly what we can do with a clean site that builds a new school rather than doing extensions to make education gold standards in the island. Now, of course, this is now the challenge, isn't it? It's that we have a need for building a school and trying to get to a better place. Let's get back to the argument of providing school meals in primary schools, which is a lot of the buildings are small. They were not built to have a servery or a kitchen in any way that would be able to serve food to children, which means extensions, planning applications, to be able to do that kind of thing safe. Building a new school will be able to help look at maybe freeing up some of the smaller schools, but building better facilities and using a clean site is the best way to go to get the best outcomes for the children of this island in what we're doing. I have full sympathy with the housing minister and the constable and the residents in the area that an extension to the park would be fantastic. I think we could organise Millennium Park so that there's more open space that's not taken up by massive planting areas, to give more space in that area, maybe change the way that it's planted to create a bigger open space. But we're in a dichotomy where we need to look at building better, bigger schools. This site is my preferred site. It has been my preferred site even before the deputy lodged this amendment to the Bridging Island Plan. I've been going through the school review. Unfortunately, there are a lot of stakeholders that need to be informed before it suddenly goes out public. We're working with those stakeholders. They're people that have to make decisions. It's got to go through different groups before I can bring it forward. And those groups that I have been talking to have been raising such issues as seeing that this is one of the preferred sites for the first school and what the second site would be, is that they're not happy and there's been more information requested. So I would have liked to have come out months ago, sir, to say what's going on, but there has been stakeholders. We don't want to shock anyone by making broad statements that where we haven't consulted with the right people and causing distress and upset for people. That we've got to make sure we do this in the right way. I will be supporting this amendment because it will create a new, modern, purpose-built school on a clean site that will really, really provide for the children of St Helier and the island, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. I do find this an odd one because from an outsider's perspective, I'm not a St Helier deputy. I'm not the education minister. I'm not closely involved with this. but I do love the Millennium Town Park. I find it hard to understand the real problem here, because it feels like actually Deputy Ward's amendment is a superb compromise solution. The amendment still involves an extension to the Millennium Town Park. With this amendment, the Millennium Town Park will grow. But it also says part of the area could be used for a school and should be used for a school. And I can't help but agree with him. The schools we have in that area of town, the buildings are aging. They are obviously, in many areas, unrestricted sites as well. And I know this, of course, would be restricted as a site. But as the Education Minister helpfully just said, it would give the Education Department the opportunity to plan from scratch a new school, purpose-built to fully modern specifications. There is no doubt in my mind, and I'm sure everyone in the Assembly agrees with me, we are putting a lot more housing provision in that area of town. Ann Street is being built today. Other sites are going to be developed in the near future. More and more people, fundamentally important to that is more and more children will be living in that area. Those children and those people will need a park. With this amendment, they'll get a bigger park, but those children also need schools. And with this amendment, they'll get a better school. Now, a slight aside here, big schools might be okay, but I do believe that when it comes to primary school, small class sizes are better than big class sizes. So when the Education Minister talks about big school, I hope he's not talking about big class sizes. Because actually one of the things we could do here is have a school which has smaller class sizes because it's purpose-built. That way the children at their younger stages get the attention that they need at the beginning of their lives. But to me, I apologise to the Connotab, but to me this is a really good amendment that is a very, very good compromise. And the type of school that can be built is, if you look at the designs around the world of primary schools, there are some unbelievably fantastic designs from an architectural perspective. A building could be built there which really does suit the park environment. It's, do not think, we do not have to build in boxes anymore. If you look at, the schools that are already in the area, they are boxes in the main. And they're old boxes, and so we do need to provide something else. So I can't see the problem with this amendment. I know the Connotab has tried to elucidate it, but from my perspective, to use that area solely for the park would be not to use it for the maximum public gain. And I do believe that a school and a park extension together is maximising the public gain. So I hope that helps states members. I'll certainly be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Will you accept, Deputy, a point of clarification from Deputy Wickenden?
Of course.
Deputy Wickenden.
Sir, do you mind if I do a point of clarification on my speech on the question of what Deputy Morell questioned on what I said? Is that allowed?
You can clarify something that you said that's been referred to in the member that just spoke.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So when I said larger schools, I meant 3 form-entry rather than bigger classrooms. I just wanted to clarify that was my meaning, sir.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Guida.
I'll be actually very happy to support this amendment. The Minister and I have been talking about this site for years already. It's something that we identified very early on, but of course we had to wait for the Education Minister to consult with all the stakeholders and present his plans before we could do anything. But it's a site that made a lot of sense from the beginning, and of course it has only become available reasonably recently. So we could have a look. We could have a look at it again after the planning application was refused. Developing an estate like education is a little bit like this old Tower of Hanoi game. I don't know if anybody will remember it here, where you have 3 roads and concentric discs that you have to move from one road to another with specific rules. And basically, to move them around, you need an empty space. So here we have a number of schools that all need to be renewed, that we know. And remember that here we're talking about decades. We're talking about a plan that will take 20 or 25 years. So we all need to modify them, to renew them. And the best way is exactly what we did to Les Canaves. We could never have built Les Canaves if we hadn't had a completely free site next to it. So we built a completely new school, and now, after we're done with it, we can raise the old one. We need to do the same with the town schools. And now we have this fresh site that will allow a completely new school, not constrained by a site which is in use. We can make the best possible school, and that will free other sites that can then be developed the best possible. This is exactly what we're trying to do with our sports and community facilities. We have the same problem. They're crumbling. They need to be renewed. But the best way is to actually move them around. That's, of course, something that we've been trying to do with Fort Regent, because it's the first facility that we want to renew. If you think about it, that's exactly what we're trying to do with the hospital. We tried extremely hard to refit the hospital where it was, while it was being used, and what was impossible. We had 2 planning applications that failed because there was no way in the world that you could replace it where it was. And yet we're trying to do it with other things like schools. So, and it's quite interesting that Deputy Southern mentioned the way that the Constable of Saint-Hélier is trying to have everything absolutely perfect, and unfortunately may sacrifice good things because he just tries to get it right. And we do have to be a little bit more flexible than that. If we are to renew, half of our estates in the next 25 years, we will have to sacrifice a few things. So all this to say that this is a very good idea. It's not set in stone. It can still be changed. It can still adapt to different requisites, especially if the education minister comes with a different plan. But I personally think that it is a very good idea. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Let me say, first of all, we're having this debate because of the failure of successive governments to deal with the whole matter of St Helier. St Helier is used as the place to put people in, and no real forethought has been given to the schools or to parks or any other amenities for the people who actually live in St Helier. And I get appalled when I think about the number of debates we've had, the number of times we talk through these issues. And I just think we're now faced with obviously difficult choices. I want to build better schools for St Helier residents and for the children of St Helier, but I also want proper park facilities. And although it's talked of as a compromise, we have no idea the size of the area that will be taken by the school and what will be put there. For example, Deputy Wickenden talked about Les Canaves School and how it was appreciated by Princess Anne when she came to it and said how good it was. Well, how big a school and what sort of facilities are going to go in there? We have no idea whatsoever. Why? Because this government has not brought forward the plan for schools. In the same way we haven't had the census and we haven't got a population policy. We are making decisions which are going to affect the island going forward on very limited information. Now, Deputy Guida was obviously delighted and thinks this is an excellent site for it. Why? Because it will enable him to keep the former police station and fire station in the Home Affairs area of influence. So in other words, Rouge Bouillon School won't be extended, won't be given better facilities if this school on the Millennium Park takes place. I want to see facilities not only for the children near Millennium Park, but also near Rouge Bouillon. So no wonder Deputy Guida said he's been talking with the Minister of Education for some time. We think this is a great site. They didn't want Rouge Bouillon School to be extended at all. And I really do believe that the Reform Party, it's all politics coming up before the election. And although I agree, as I say, that the better schools for our children and so on, they've latched on this, but it'll be at the expense of the children near Rouge Bouillon. So Sir, I think in the end, I may end up pumping for increasing the size of the park with the constable. I think that's absolutely essential for all residents, not just children. And I think that we've got to fight better for schools, including Rouge Bouillon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Labby.
Thank you, sir. And also, I do appreciate the contortions in a way that Deputy Ward is making and did make during his proposal speech to keep the window open for Moore Park. I guess the choice, I guess what Deputy Ward is saying is that if we approve his proposition today, it doesn't mean definitely that it won't be a park, this site. I would prefer, because I think it's safer, that we reject his proposition today, but at the same time saying that doesn't mean it won't eventually be a school. But I think that is the better position to be in, because I can't see, if this is passed, there would be any incentive for education to look elsewhere. And I've had one briefing with the team conducting the review, and I had two important questions for them. One was, if the planning application for housing on the Gas Place site had been approved, where would you put the school that you want to put there now? And they wouldn't give me an answer to that one. But those sites have to exist, because they could be building now the housing thing if it got passed. My second question was, how much of the Gas Place site do you imagine the school occupying? And the eventual answer I managed to tease out of them was all of it. So I think the notion that we're going to get the school that education wants and a park, or Moore Park, that myself and the constable want, is fantasy. The answer was very clear. They want to use all of the site, the Gas Place site, for this new primary school. So I just, there might be consultations going on with stakeholders. That hasn't included the community around that area. I just can't imagine, I can't imagine the Constable of St Lawrence or the Constable of St John, two who immediately spring to my mind, but of course there are lots of others too, bringing a proposition like this to the Assembly about their parish without having had proper, exhaustive, meaningful consultation with the community to bring them on board or find out what their opinions and preferences are. So we haven't had that, and I know Deputy Ward is in a difficult position because he's a deputy of the district, and I'm the deputy of Tunnel Street. And I fought, of course, original plans when I was first elected with the Tunnel Street residents, the original plans for housing, which were quite dense, and we took it to, it was approved, I think, by the planning committee, and we took it to a third party appeal, and we won that appeal. And then subsequent redraws and redrafts came back, and we all know where we are now. But I'm very clear on what the residents in my section of that would prefer. And I've gone on about this ever since I've been asked about it. And so, the Assembly will know how important I feel doubling the size of this park is for all those housing developments that are going to be built, and the existing residents too. So it doesn't surprise me that the Minister accepted this proposition. I can't remember when the Planning and Environment Department came forward with plans for a park. I was certainly fought tooth and nail when I was fighting, again, another fight in Green Street to ensure that the pocket park there was retained. The Assembly did back me, and it went ahead anyway. And I've had to listen to members speaking in the Assembly and talking about the importance of green space and how St Helier, we know, does not have the percentage anywhere near of green space that it should have for the amount of people living in it. So it's not going to happen, sir, unless the Assembly takes the brave step to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk and say, because amenity is always pushed down the line. There's always something more important. Unless we say, no, we're going to take a stand, because this is, I think we can find other places for Springfield School. There's a lot of movement in Springfield at the moment. There's a lot of potential. And I'd really like to work on that with people who want to find the solution. But I fear that will be cut off with this, and we'd have to wait till the next Assembly. But back to my final point, that what this really needs, if we're going to stand a chance of doubling the size of that park, it needs a strong message of political will, which the Assembly could do today. But please don't be fooled into the thinking this is a nice compromise because the school will only occupy a bit of the gas place. No, the proposition that I was told was for all of it. So with regret, I would ask, because I think Deputy Ward, to be fair to him, has been reasonable here, but it's all in the nuance, and I'd rather we retained the position of this could be a park. We would like this to be a park, unless absolutely there is no other solution for the school. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Chief Minister.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, I think actually the fact I'm speaking after the Housing Minister, but also Deputy Labby is also wearing his deputy hat for his district, illustrates the dilemmas and discussions that we've had and the difficult decisions we always face when we're dealing with these sites. So what I'd like to do is just try and put a bit of context together, and hopefully that will explain why I will be supporting Deputy Ward and indeed agree with quite a number of the comments that he has made. I think it is reminding members that the site, in terms of decisions by the Assembly, certainly from memory, sir, has been approved for development. A previous Assembly took a decision to acquire the land on the basis that it was developed for housing and parking. And therefore, sir, from my perspective, I do regard this particular proposition, which the Minister for Environment has said is a safeguarding exercise, i.e. it safeguards the land. So it doesn't preclude a park, but it does safeguard it as a top priority for education. And I think it does also illustrate the dilemma sometimes, and Deputy Labby did refer to it actually in his discussions with Andium. It illustrates the dilemma about coordinating the different needs of the island across the government and the ALOs. Obviously, Andium will be very much focused around the provision of housing and have gone down other ways, but obviously they will, in general, not particularly be focused, for example, on the provision of educational facilities. And obviously that's a matter for the government and this Assembly. And but it is something, so that coordination is something I've tasked the new CEO with, and I know she is very much working on that as we speak. I think just to clarify, where we are as of today is I'm expecting the work that has been going on for a number of months as part of the education review to be returning to the Regeneration Steering Group. My expectation that is in early April, and my expectation is also that then that if you like, the work to that date will in some shape or form be published obviously before the elections. and I'm absolutely, if members would wish, I'm very happy to arrange a presentation as well as talk through the thinking on that. And there are two phases to that work, sir. And phase one does presently envisage the use of this site that we are debating for a primary school. Now, sir, my recollection is different to Deputy Labby's, I have to say, because I have also asked the question, and indeed I, to date, have been assured that that they felt it was possible to treat the development as the provisional primary school and also an addition to the town park, and it's on that basis I would support this amendment, sir. I think, sir, that's when we get into the difference between effectively concepts, and as things evolve, so it will depend on who spoke to the officers at what point in time, and also as I said, as these plans continue to evolve, and what political direction is given to those officers. I will say that one of the reasons for the delay was not around the phase one, but was more around phase two, and certainly I felt that there needed to be a further challenge in the overall estate around a slightly wider focus that needed to be applied. And that is what officers have been doing and have, I believe, come up with some good solutions. Can I just say, sir, though, I want to just address a couple of remarks that have been made around education. But before I do that, sir, I do absolutely understand the passion of the Connétable of St Helier on this. Absolutely no question. I'm hugely sympathetic to what he's trying to achieve. And in terms of his passion for St Helier, sir, I have tried to support in a whole number of ways where we can. I absolutely, again, have said this a number of times, we've lost 2 years in what I'd have liked to have done because of the pandemic. The amount of resource that's sucked out of the system to protect people's lives and businesses and jobs, really, a number of members seem to have forgotten that, even when, even now, Omicron is still prevalent, and indeed, members of certain age groups are now getting their full vaccine, even as we speak. So I absolutely agree with the Connétable. I've made some suggestions to officers about, I think, future funding streams that need to be in place for future support in St Helier, and I hope that some of the schemes that we have actually finally started and or have actually gone in for planning permission will at least move fractionally the kind of improvement of St Helier forward. And equally, as I've said, sir, I very much look forward, as I'm informed, is apparently still happening, seeing the Hopper bus arriving here at the end of next month. But the crucial thing, sir, on the education side, I do just want to address something, sir, that was said in common if it's this debate or the previous debate about what had or hadn't been done on education, but particularly in St Helier. The crucial thing about the educational state is obviously achieving both funding and sites. And obviously, looking ahead, I'm sure members will be aware that when they approved the government plan of for 2022, when it was approved before Christmas, we have approved something like a spend of £62 million over the next 4 years, which is investment into the estate. Some of that is included for the reorganisation of the secondary schools. There is a substantial sum of money for a north of town St Helier primary school, sir, and also funding for a south of St Helier school, and also funding for a further education campus. In other words, those are in the funding funding that this Assembly have indicated they support and which can be accommodated within our funding streams, sir. Some of that work, for example, things on playing fields, 3G pitch replacements, improvements, Montalaba extension, things like that, are scheduled to start during this year, sir. But equally, and I appreciate that somebody will say, well, that's looking forward, but actually, don't forget that in terms of the educational state, I accept it's not in St Helier or St Saviour's, Le Kennebec was implemented and built and completed during these last 4 years. With at a minor level, the Hope Valley School Bus has been turned into a mobile library. We redid St Mary's School at 6.5 million, sir. there's been 100,000 on the redevelopment of La Sante. La Pastorale has been fully established as a service to support youth provision, sir. We've put various things in, about 3G pitches. And that's been reasonable sums of money in taking place. So what I wouldn't want to do, I accept the point about the location in the person making the statement, sir, but there has been rather a lot done around the school's estate, and there's always more to do. And obviously, I think the Roquier receives new funding, sir, as does Montalabé, the Redesign of Greenfields, and the VCP replacement school, sir. So I just want to, sometimes these things get said and sometimes things go off and gain credence, sir. There has been and is forecast to be quite significant investment in the school's estate, as is right. So, sir, for me, sir, this proposition, this amendment, sir, is very much about safeguarding the site until that school's review is finalised. At this stage, sir, my information is that phase 1 of that review is definitely identifying the site as a very high potential for a primary school, which would then release sites. I agree with Deputy Ward around pocket parks. One's got to use that as a catalyst for improving facilities. It might also include the Longsort site for for youth provision and things like that, sir. And that overall brings benefits to all the individual communities it touches. And on that basis, sir, I have no hesitation in supporting this amendment, sir. And on the basis of the comments of the Minister for Environment, I would ask all our members to do so, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. I hope members will forgive me. I'm still getting my thoughts together on this, and I think it's fair to say I would usually support Deputy Ward. I usually am in agreement with the propositions that he brings, but I'm undecided on whether I can support this one today. And my feelings stem from, in terms of hierarchy of what that land should be used for, I think it absolutely should not be used for housing, and I'm in total agreement there. And if it was a choice between housing and a new school, then school would be the way to go. And I think the idea of building a school there at first glance, it does seem it appeals, and in isolation it does seem like a good idea, a lovely new school on that beautiful park site. But where I'm hesitating, sir, I mean, firstly, I'm a resident of that area, and that area is on the St Helier St Saviour border, and I live very close to the town park, and nobody has asked the residents of that area what they think about this. So I'm speaking today as a deputy, but also as a resident. And my feeling about the use of that land is, once that land is built on, we can't get it back, and that opportunity to have open space is gone. And yes, schools are very important, certainly in that area. It's more important that we have a new school than any new homes. But what is much more important than any type of building, and what the residents, children and adults of all ages desperately need in that area of town, and of course the edge of St Saviour, is access to nature and open spaces. And somebody mentioned that, a previous speaker mentioned the Constable of St Helier and his vision for having a park all the way through as being the perfect plan. Well, yes, why should we not go for that perfect plan? And I think residents of the area are hoping for that perfect plan. And why should they not have it? Open space is in such short supply in that area as it is. And so anyone who has used that park, especially on a sunny day, will know that it is very, very well used. In fact, it's often mobbed. If you get sunshine on a sunny day, at various times of the day, whether it's people there on their lunch break or families after school, it is absolutely jam-packed, and there currently isn't space for everybody who wants to use the park to use it for what they want to use it for. So, for example, if it is a warm day, you can't go there and kick a ball around because there are families with small children on the grass, and likewise, if you're a family with a small child, you're terrified of getting hit by a football, and the grass is literally packed with people sitting on blankets. The park is very small. It feels small. In terms of nature and green space in town, as a family, actually, we don't tend to use it very often because it is often really overcrowded. So we tend to go out of town. We're lucky that we have a car in town, and we make use of the residents' parking facilities in town, and we're very lucky that we can do that. But families who can't go out of town, and that's their only option for the green space nearby, they're not getting that feeling of being in an open space because often it is rammed. You go to that park and it's beautiful, and it's becoming more beautiful as the plants and the trees mature, but you don't get that expansive feeling that we can get when we are further out of town, perhaps on a beach or in one of the parks like Winston Churchill Park in St Brelade's. It feels hemmed in. And particularly that end of the park, so that the end of the park that we're talking about borders St Saviour, and I don't think enough is said about St Saviour not having enough open space, because I think St Saviour is such a mixed bag in terms of we do have lots of open space in some areas, but actually this area of St Saviour, which is St Saviour 2 district, of which I'm a deputy, residents have even less access to green space than town residents. There's a hill there. It's very overcrowded with housing, and that green space specifically in that area that we're talking about is desperately needed by St Saviour residents. And I just think, imagine if we were talking about building a school on the edge of Howard Davis Park on pre-existing parkland. We would never allow it, would we? And I think and no, it's not existing parkland, but in the minds of many, it should be parkland. And in the minds of the residents in that area, they're desperate for it to be parkland, and they've been told about this master plan, and they're already kind of gearing up for that. And I think it would be crushing to many of the residents to be told that now it's not going to be. And previous speakers have mentioned that actually a school in that area would take up all of that extra parkland, and I think it would. And Deputy Morale was asking about class sizes, and I totally agree with him. Smaller class sizes are optimal, but actually you're more likely to get smaller class sizes with a bigger school. So where we have the 2 form entry schools, where you have, say, 2 reception, 2 year 1, 2 year 2 classes, you're more likely to have 2 smaller classes rather than one overcrowded class. And I think if a school was allowed to be built there, it would be a large school. Again, so I don't think all of our town schools are fully subscribed. We haven't got the data on that, but from my own personal experience recently in trying to enrol my child in a school that is appropriate for him, I don't think all the town schools are fully subscribed. And again, if we're thinking about what children need, if children live in the centre of town in a home without a garden, I think in terms of the hierarchy of what they need more is space to play near their home, adequate space to play. And I think we perhaps need to think a bit differently about school provision, because yes, it is lovely to walk to school, but not every parent who lives in town with their child wants their child to attend a school in town. And I think the popularity of our private schools demonstrates that. A lot of our private schools have beautiful grounds. And I know anecdotally that parents often choose those private schools because of the outdoor facilities, and they're willing to travel to those schools. So, I think this is why I think consultation is important. Ideas such as having a decent school bus service to a new school, perhaps just on the outskirts of town in a beautiful area, rather than cramming it in to that tiny green space that's in the middle of town. I think there's other ways to provide the new school. Sorry, I'm just scanning my notes. I just wanted to go back to the Chief Minister mentioned the passion of the Constable of St Helier. And that passion made me sit up, actually, because I think more than anybody, the Constable of St Helier is in touch with parishioners in that area and knows what is needed and what the residents want. And I think, I'm just wondering, where is that passion from other members? Because it was that passion that members used to protect People's Park from a hospital being built on it. And I don't see that this is any different. We're talking about a school being built on potential parkland. So I don't think I can support this there. What I do perhaps need to hear more detail on is I'm not 100% sure in my mind about the risks involved with approving this or not approving this, because I want to take action to make sure, as far as I can, that housing is not built on that land. So I would like to know if I vote for or against this, how that would impact the potential for housing to be built on that land. So I will listen to the summing up.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I couldn't resist not to speak and I asked to speak during the housing minister speech, because it just showed to the assembly that the housing minister doesn't agree with education minister, and we heard from the environment minister, from infrastructure minister. It's just going back to sit together. I would challenge, there are lots of things that we are not agreeing with Chief Minister, but on this particular point, I would like to support Chief Minister and not my constable at this particular case. And why? I'm passionate about the parks, I'm passionate about green spaces, and I'm passionate about education. It has been stated clearly that park can be extended. 2/3 of the space would go to the park. It will be bigger park. And it has been mentioned about the pocket parks. I agree with pocket parks. I cannot agree with pocket schools. We need to have proper schools. I haven't been approached not once, but the parishioners asking how they can apply to schools outside of town, how they can actually get a space, because they don't want to go to Springfield. They don't want to. I will not continue to, and not because the staff is great. They're doing amazing job, but the conditions. We want to have a green space. So the spaces. By the way, at Springfield schools there is no space. It's up to the capacity if people even want to apply. But there are other schools that do have spaces, and the people would rather to drive the child outside of town, not because of the quality of education, because of the state of the school. They're not fit for purpose. I cannot agree that we'll need to have buses to drive children from center of the town to our town schools. I cannot see, because to drive buses, it means the child needs to wake up 30 minutes early, get into the bus, to create extra expense, to create extra. I mean, we need to have schools in safe walking distance. And we have to have compromises. Consultation will be consultation, and I'm sure will be extensive consultation, and we will have all stakeholders involved, because none of this development would go forward without consultation. And I would suggest why the consultation, I hope consultation was taken by the government during the review, and if housing minister doesn't know about consultation, it means that I'm not sure what consultation has been taken. And about vision from Andium. By the way, Andium does an amazing job. But it's not about vision from Andium. It's about the vision from this state's assembly. It's about the vision from our common strategic priorities, corporate vision that we need to communicate to Andium. And It's not Andium's fault because they are trying to do as much as they can and meet demanding conflicting needs between all possible parties that communicate with them. And I'm not sure if Andium spoke to the Chief Minister, Infrastructure Minister and Education Minister before they gone out with the announcement that they're supporting Constable amendment, proposition. I have a big question mark. I'm not sure who can answer me. Maybe they did. What I'm trying to bring back, also family who cannot drive outside of town to enjoy countryside, they cannot drive outside of town to enjoy country schools. It's parents and children who deserve modern standard school, and we have so much ability to have a child's place, and we will have extended park. Personally, as St. Helier deputy, I will not allow the space develop without increasing the park, but I'm sure that solutions can be found, and we need to make compromises. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Senator Moore.
Thank you, sir. I'll be brief because there have been a number of very helpful speeches since I turned my light on to speak, sir. I think for me, this debate has caused me to reflect back over the learning of the last couple of years, and particularly during the lockdowns, we all spent considerable time feeling concerned for and thinking about those people who were living in cramped conditions, in densely packed space in town where they struggled to get out and enjoy fresh air during that time. It must have been extremely difficult for all of them. And as Deputy Doublé said in her speech, the spaces, the green spaces that we do currently have in town are often very crowded and well used because there is a clear need in town for them. Throughout these debates, I found it very helpful to look at maps and at satellite images that we can see. And my basic calculations, using the tip of my pen, has led me to consider that the extended Millennium Park, taking in the gasworks site, would still be only about the same size as Parade Gardens, which is just not a big space. It really is not. And as the Constable of St. Helier said, parks actually need to be places where people can break into a sweat, where they can do some decent exercise. We can't simply have pocket parks and pocket-sized schools for them. We need to offer spaces and a space to breathe, a space to exercise. And so, sir, although I commend Deputy Ward for trying to bring a solution to schools, I have to say I have some sympathy with Deputy Higgins' cynicism over the siting and the potential to improve Rouge Bouillon School. I land on the fact that we simply should protect and offer, well, not protect, but we should simply offer a greater amount of green space to our town dwellers, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Meza.
Thank you, sir. I've been disappointed by some of the recent contributions in this debate, particularly that by Senator Moore and Deputy Doublé. And if, in case she's listening outside the chamber, I'm going to work very hard to try to convince Deputy Doublé to vote in favour of this amendment, because based on everything she says, I think she may not realise that she's actually, in opposing this amendment, making it more likely to get the worst outcome based on the things that she considered to be a priority in improving access to green space and improving the quality of life for the children who live in that area. Sir, I, like Deputy Doublé, I live very closely to the Millennium Park. I'm just a few doors down from it on Oxford Road. I walk through that park multiple times a day. It is extremely well used. It's a desperately needed resource in that area for all of the people who live around it, adults and children alike. And thank goodness we have it there. It's It's a combination of extremely hard work from many people to get that part of the park in the first place, including Deputy Southern getting the financing for it, and with a bit of luck thrown in as well to get it. And it could, frankly, have been much worse. The North of Town master plan actually had that whole part of the gasworks site down for housing. There was a planning application approved for housing on there for 300 homes, which I and others fought against. And throughout all of that, myself as a then St Helier deputy and other St Helier representatives said we wanted the park expanded over the whole site. And in beginning of 2018, we compromised on that because an option was presented to this assembly to get an extended park, and the cost of that would be to have some housing on that site as well. And it's often forgotten about. We talk about the brilliant work that Andium does, and the small print of that decision, and people keep forgetting this, is that it wasn't actually to be social housing or first-time buyers. That was actually to be open market housing, because that was the only way they could see of getting the numbers up. But we accepted it as a compromise because it was much better than the plans for 300 homes on the whole of it. And as the course of this term has gone on, until the Education Minister spoke in this debate, we haven't actually had the clarity that we've needed on what the plans are for improving the school estate in St Helier. And that, for those of us who live in and represent St Helier, is extremely important to us because we know of many of the difficulties that our constituents have. Deputy Doublé talked about there being capacity in some of the town schools, and I'm sorry to say that she's wrong about that. There are many, many children who live in this part of town who can't go to the school that they live nearest to because it's full. They have to go elsewhere. In some parts of town, they'll get pushed out to St Luke's, but St Luke's is a tiny school, so if they can't get there, they might get pushed out to Plat Douay, if not there, to Samaray, if not there, to St Clement. I know people who live literally a few doors down from me who send their children to Grouville Primary School and have to drive them out there and back every day. I know somebody who lives in Le Breton Lane whose child was in the catchment area for Springfield School, and that's where she applied for her daughter to go to, but couldn't get a space, so has to go to Dauvergne instead, and Dauvergne is a fantastic school. She spends 45 minutes in the car in traffic every morning, and she drives past 3 schools to get her daughter up that hill to Dauvergne, and she spends the whole journey absolutely paranoid that she's going to run into a traffic jam that she couldn't have predicted and end up being late for work. That's not a good quality of life, when an alternative would be to provide a decent multi-form entry school in town that those parents can walk their children to. We can provide some urban regeneration for pathways to that school, and Deputy Ward showed pictures of how that can look with some of the work that's going on with the brewery site. And Deputy Doublé talked about children, how important it is for children to have access to nature, and she's absolutely right. But do you think that they'll be able to enjoy this open green space more or less if they're spending 45 minutes in the car there and back every day, or if their school opens out onto green space within walking distance where their parents, instead of spending all that time in the car to drive them back afterwards, could take them to the park immediately right by the school, even if it's just a short period of time, to calm down and relax before then taking them home. I think children will have more access to open green space if this is the option that's pursued. But, and this is the key point, and this is why Deputy Doublé should vote for this amendment, which is that this amendment does not stop the possibility of extending the park on the whole site, if that's a realistic option. If it is the case that with a bit more work on that school estates review, there can be an alternative site in the vicinity that's just as good or even better than this, then I know that I and St Helier representatives will happily support that and get an extended park as well. I would be delighted to see the park extended on the whole site, and I would be delighted to vote in favour of that when and only when the question of where these kids will go to school has been answered. And what Deputy Ward's amendment does, and it's kind of hard to tell it from the wording of the amendment, because the amendment refers to policy CI1. You have to go to the Island Plan addendum to read what that says. So it's adding it to a list of sites where the policy will be, and I'm reading it out here, the alternative development of these sites will not be supported unless it can be demonstrated that they are no longer required for educational purposes. Perfect, then. If we can find other sites for it, great. But what this does do is it excludes the possibility of building homes on it. And not just building homes, but building what were meant to be open market homes, not affordable homes, which is what we'd prefer Andium to be spending their time and resources from. So, several members have used the phrase, have your cake and eat it, in this debate, which has always struck me as a strange phrase, because that's the whole point of cake. You do want to eat it. But this amendment really does offer us that opportunity to safeguard that site from overdevelopment and cramming of homes in what's already the most densely populated part of the island, and leave it so that there are only two possibilities, really, for that site. Either fully extended park over the whole site, which would be brilliant, or extend the park on the majority of that site and provide a brilliant new-built school, multi-form entry, so that the quality of life for people in that area who have got children can be improved and allow those children to walk to school. It'll get cars off the road, because you won't have people having to drive their children outside to out-of-town areas twice a day. And that may not seem obvious if you're somebody who lives in the vicinity whose child does have a place in the local school that you're happy with, or you're somebody without children. But for those who have struggled to get places for their children in schools, that will make a huge difference to them. It will make our town a nicer place to live, improve the quality of life, and improve people's well-being as well, because they won't have to face as much stress in the morning and school rush hours. And of course, it will alleviate pressure on the out-of-town schools as well, as people aren't pushed out and out as there's more housing developments there. One point that Deputy Higgins made about Reform Jersey's position on this, he described us as jumping on it. And I would point out to him that there is no threat to Rouge Bouillon because of this. And Reform Jersey was pleased to, on more than one occasion, back propositions brought by Deputy Gardiner to safeguard the sites, what's currently used by the fire service next to Rouge Bouillon School. I went with the local Reform Jersey deputies to Rouge Bouillon School not too long ago to meet with the head teacher and walk around and see the facilities there and see the miracles that Deputy Ward spoke about in his opening speech that they're talking about, that they deliver there. That we have voted for that amendment previously, and Deputy Gardiner's amendment just now spoke about the sites in the immediate vicinities of the school for safeguarding those. So we've got that safeguarding for Rouge Bouillon there as well. A good future for Rouge Bouillon School, either on that site or whatever could be proposed, will wholeheartedly be behind. But Springfield needs some attention as well. There are no options for Springfield School on its current site. The way it is sandwiched in between houses there, the fact it's got only tarmac space outside, you just can't do anything with it. So a freshly built school elsewhere is obviously the preferred option, and I'm pleased that the Education Minister has revealed that. I think the only point I'll make in closing, sir, is that it's a shame that these issues are coming out in the debate now. It would have been much better if we'd have been able to have that open conversation about it in advance. I recall originally there was an intention by the government to oppose this site, and now that's changed, oppose this amendment, and now that's changed. We weren't really notified properly by that, and we hadn't had confirmation from the Education Minister until his speech in this debate that this is his preferred site, and it really isn't ideal that we debate an island plan, debate building homes on this site or that site without much clearer indication of what the needs and potential plans will be for the schools on this site. But this amendment from Deputy Ward allows us to safeguard that site for either a park or for a school, and prevents us from pursuing what would be the worst option, which is technically still on the table, which is homes for the whole site, where they did get planning permission for it. So to those who may have sympathy with Deputy Dublay's position that she adumbrated, I would say please do vote for this amendment, because it prevents the worst options and still leaves those alternative good options perfectly open if a decent plan can come forward. So, sir, I'm voting in favour of this, and I have visions of what this will do for the quality of life of the children who'll get to enjoy greater open space in that area, who'll get to enjoy much easier and nicer journeys to school, and end up in a state-of-the-art, brilliant school facility to receive their education, and not to mention all of the stress that will alleviate for their parents as well, and all the pollution from the cars driving that we won't have as well. I see no downside to this amendment, and I hope members will support it.
Sir, could I ask a point of clarification?
Will you? Yes.
The Speaker mentioned that that housing might go on this site if we don't approve this amendment, and I just wondered if he had any reason to believe that Andium want to build housing on there, or any evidence that can back that up.
Also, there is a planning application that has been approved for that site, which predates Andium taking over the site, and that is for around 300 homes and no extra green space. That was approved, that was appealed against, the appeal failed, that is still live, so that is the default now. Andium had pursued alternative plans for it, which they weren't able to acquire planning permission for. So that's the default at the moment for what can go on that site until it's either rezoned, which is what this amendment seeks for it to do, so it can only be a school or park. Otherwise, it's still perfectly open for it to have more homes on it, and that would be the worst option.
Thank you. Deputy St Martin.
Thank you, sir. And what's becoming apparent to me during this debate, and it's clear to me now that it's not clear as to what will happen to the site. I was a little bit surprised by the Minister accepting this, but I've gone away and done my research and spoken to people who know far better than I do. And the Minister's right, because we, in agreeing this proposition, which I think we probably will, and I think I'm going to vote in favour of it, we will safeguard the site of education. But we mustn't forget that in the island plan there is another policy which safeguards the site for open space. And what will happen then is, what should happen is that the planning process will take over, and the balance that we always talk about when it comes to planning decisions will have to be made. And if at that time the balance of educational need is greater than that for open space, we will have a new school. If the balance comes out in favour of the need for greater green open space, we will have a school somewhere else. So I, sir, am content to vote with this amendment on the basis that the planning process will take over and the right decision will come out. It is a great shame that we do not have as members the education report, which shows us what they... I mean, I can't believe actually that we've come into this debate and allowed that to happen. Somebody should have done whatever was necessary to say to education, this debate cannot happen until your review has been completed. So that is a shame. The other advantage that we do have is that Andium are the owners of a number of sites here or thereabouts, and other sites nearby are also in state's ownership. There is a plan that needs to be hatched here. It may not be for a school on the site, it may be for a school somewhere else. But for me, sir, I'm not going to speak more. I'm going to vote in favour and allow the planning process to do the right piece of work and come up with the right solution for the site sometime in the near future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy St Mary.
Thank you, sir. And to a certain extent, the previous speaker has stolen my words. I was about to say, I will say, that perhaps insufficient attention has been paid to the point made by the Environment Minister in his earlier address, when he referred to policy CI6, entitled Provision and Enhancement of Open Space, and if I may read the relevant paragraph, the following areas have been identified and safeguarded for provision of new open space, and their development for other purposes will not be supported. 1. Part of Jersey Gas Site, Tunnel Street, extension to Millennium Town Park, as specified, etc. So there already is a policy in force, and I don't see that Deputy Ward's amendment in any way negates that. As far as I'm concerned, his proposition effectively reinforces the intention that there shall be no development on that site unless it is for education. As the Deputy Martin says, that is for a different day. But I'm quite well. I think between them, the two propositions will, or the policy as exists, and the proposition will ensure that that park is not built upon, and that I think is the main purpose of the exercise, yet at the same time flagging Deputy Ward's rightful concern as to lack of education facilities in the area. So I will be supporting his proposition, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Pallas.
Thanks. I only want to speak very briefly. It's something I just want to pick up on a point that Senator Mesic made. During my time as Assistant Minister at Education, I dealt with a lot of appeals in regards to parents wanting their children to go to specific schools, and they were always quite difficult things to deal with. They were certainly distressing for parents, and I'm sure distressing for the children involved as well. And it's important that, and after what Senator Mesic, the points Senator Mesic made about the distances children have to travel, that clearly is something that we need to avoid and something that we can do better on. I know we keep saying it, but we do need to concentrate on ensuring that we give children the best possible start in life. That's something the majority of us have signed up to, and that's something I would like to think is at the forefront of our thinking. Children's well-being, both physical and mental, again, should be at the forefront of our thoughts at all times. Many members have talked about the need for a new school in this area for some time, certainly all the way through this political term. There are new homes that are being delivered as we speak. There's some that have been built over recent years, and no doubt in the future we're going to see even more. And it's right, I think, that Deputy Ward is showing some forward thinking in regards to planning for a new school in an area that I have no doubt will need it. Therefore, I'm going to support the amendment, and I expect the site to provide the necessary school facilities if required, and potentially any improvements to the town park that may be possible as well. Just more generally, current primary schools in St Helier, I know this from my work within sport, some of the work that Jersey Sport were doing. Current primary schools in St Helier all have issues around quality amenity space. That I think potentially limits the physical development of students, and that is simply not good enough. We do need to do better, and I think a new school in this area, there's enough space there to ensure that we don't make the mistakes we've made in the past, and improve on what we've delivered in the past. I think anybody that's visited Rouge-Villey or Janvin will see the very limited amenity space, the very limited play areas that children have got to use in those schools, and we've just simply got to ensure that not only do we look after the academic development of young people, we also look after their physical development as well. Janvin's fortunate it can use Springfield School, but not all schools have the benefit of that. First Tower is another one where I'm sure the members that represent that area know very well the limitations on the school and what they can deliver on within the environs of their school. I know often they have to go to the beach to be able to do the things they need to do, but you can't do that in the middle of the winter. So I'm going to support this, like my fellow Progress Party member, because I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Yes, Deputy Owls. Sorry, someone in Deputy Owls' seat. Sorry, Deputy Taddier.
I thought that Deputy Owls was speaking from somewhere else there.
No, I just saw her name pop up, but of course it's you, isn't it, in her seat?
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I won't speak for long because I think the debate's been had and it's been won, and it seems that we're vehemently in agreement on this one. I do want to say, though, it's first of all, I'm really saddened at the way that this is needed to be brought as an amendment, because yet again we see that St Heliers, inner St Heliers school children for this government have been an afterthought, and I really enjoy listening to debates and admire that the different parish schemes that they have throughout the island and the pride that the parishes take in their local communities and the schools. And even though I haven't always agreed, for example, with all of the planning decisions, I really admire the sense of community that we have right across our island. And of course those communities aren't just limited to the parishes, that they're limited to places which sometimes cross parish boundaries or within specific areas. And I see the pride and also the way that the constables in particular fight for their parishes and the students. And I can think of several great examples, whether it's the St Martin's, what they've done with that village, the school, and the green spaces there, and also in St John's, which I'm familiar with, and Lemoy School in my own constituency, just to name a few. And I remember, you don't always appreciate it when you're growing up, but I lived, the family house bordered right on and opened up onto Llanelli playing fields, and I remember the heaps of ground when the fields were either being constructed or resurfaced, and I could just look out the window, and if I saw some of my friends playing football there and I hadn't got my invite, I would just go out the back door and start playing with them anyway, and they didn't mind. And I could walk or cycle to Lemoy School without needing to go on the road. I could go along the cycle track onto the railway walk, which, thanks to Deputy Truscott's amendment, which is coming up, will safeguard that area as special status and protect it for future generations. And I could get to my primary school and come back safely. And then when I was at Llanelli School, again, I could walk there, but I also benefited from the fact that although Llanelli was on a very small footprint, it had a playing field right adjacent to it. And I know that looking at Springfield School, you might think, well, it's got Springfield not so far away. That's not adjacent at all. How many busy roads do you have to cross to get there? And it's a shame that in this instance, the constable and the many deputies who are fighting for this proper vision, and I think this deliverable, realistic vision for, yes, having a much bigger park. It's not going to be Hyde Park, I feel I have to say to the Constable of St Helier, because he's not the Constable of London. He's not the Mayor of London. He's the Constable of St Helier, which includes Inner St Helier. And we have to be realistic. There was never a park there in the first place. It had to be fought for. And so, as a little aside, I haven't got the response yet because I only sent the email a few minutes ago, but I've asked my friends and colleagues at the L'Office de Gérier to find out what the Gérier is for Ringbinder, because that could be an interesting name for renaming the park when it's extended, or indeed we could have a special Ringbinder corner somewhere in the park, which is a plinth, and people could make speeches there, a bit like in Hyde Park. So the Constable can deliver a little bit of Hyde Park to the centre of St Helier, but it might just have to be a little bit smaller. But think about how many more people, families, will actually end up enjoying the park, being brought there specifically because they have a reason to go there. And I think this is the whole issue around placemaking in Jersey. You can have great open spaces. I think of some of the things that have been done at the waterfront. You know, you've got this amazing sculpture, the dolphins with the swimmers. I think it's, if I'm not wrong, I don't think it's a Philip Jackson one. I'd have to watch what I'm saying. I think it may well be. But the point is, it's a beautiful sculpture, but unless you've got a reason to go down to the waterfront, you're not going to go there. I mean, you're certainly not going to go there for the haute cuisine and the Michelin stars of Le Fregat restaurant, or to look at the amazing lifelike upturned ship that's down there. Again, a subjective viewpoint. But you will go to the Millennium Town Park or the new Ringbinder Park if you're dropping your children there, your grandchildren. You're going to pick them up from after-school activities there. And you might well stay there on a June evening when you've got long summer evenings, when there's some entertainment that's being put on because of the uplift in funding and that there's more arts in the community going on in the centre of St Helier. You may well stay there with your picnic, with your family, and enjoy what's going on, whether or not you actually live in that particular part or whether, in fact, you may live somewhere across the border. So I think the vision that we are being sold here and we're talking about is already on the table. It's the vision that's shared by so many of the St Helier deputies, whether it's Deputy Gardner or Deputy Ward or other representatives in this Assembly, and of course those who have gone before. And you know what? The backstop is that if ministers come forward and say, you know, we found a better site for the school, it's going to go somewhere else, and of course Deputy Ward is open to that, and the park will then be extended to its full capacity. But what it won't be used for is to cram more and more housing into an area of town which is already oversubscribed, sir. So I think, and I would hope, that this proposition can be passed today, even by the Constable of St Helier, who I think would have listened to the debate and who can still buy into the vision that all of his deputies, I think, or many of his deputies, have for that area.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member speak on this amendment? If not, I call upon the Deputy Ward to reply. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. It's quite a long debate in the end. I always make notes on every speaker, and I now end up with 7 or 8 pages, which I have to read my own handwriting again, which has become a constant challenge to me in this Assembly, but we'll see what we can do. So I'll try and go in order, but I may have to flit around. The Constable of St Helier, I know he opposes this, and I'm not going to be as trite as to say he's opposing adequate facilities for children in school, because I'm sure that isn't the case. But when you oppose something, you really need to come up with a solution as to what you're going to do instead of it. And unfortunately, that solution has not been offered to us. And I know it's not been offered by the School States Review, and I see the shared concern over why that's not come to us. And Deputy Luce was absolutely correct. I have no idea. I will say to Deputy Luce, as the panel, the Education Scrutiny Panel, have tried. We've tried on a number of occasions on a number of things and haven't got anything either. So, you know, I'm afraid I cannot be responsible for that one. So the Constable did raise a few things that I have to address. He talked about, and I think what we've got here are some real straw man arguments that I have to take apart, really. He talked about if a school was built on that site, then it would be, and the words were, it was be excluded from the west of people using it. So schools don't act like that anymore. Primary schools are open before school, after school, for school clubs. They are open in every single holiday for school clubs for children, and particularly during COVID, they've certainly been used as hubs for all sorts of facilities that are needed. And this school, if built, would be smack bang in the centre of an area where that's much needed, and by a park. So actually, sir, the use of this facility could be much wider than that, and will be, because that's the way modern schools are used. And I will jump directly to Deputy Morell's point, because he made a really good point. And I was boring him senseless the other day with his screen with pictures of schools, and we were talking about looking at schools around the world. And there's a cracking school in somewhere called in Croxteth in Liverpool, where they've built smack bang in the middle of a park. And it is about designing the right school for the right place and being sensitive to the area. But he did make one point that I wrote down and I put a circle round, which was maximum public gain. And I think that's what we need to think about with these sites smack bang in the centre of St Helier, getting maximum public gain. Now, I've looked also, and I talked to Senator Moore here, when she said about the looking at the maps, and I've done a little bit of that myself, so I tried to avoid it because although I suppose Google Maps is in scale, if you look at the footprint of Springfield School, and that's the closest school to here, it really fits onto the end of the park. And Springfield School is a sprawling school. It's spread out. It's not spread up. And I see no reason why you can't build a little up with the school, 2 or 3 floors, and increase the size of the school. And I will say to the Education Minister, thank you for your support. But the only thing I would say to the Minister is I don't think it was helpful to talk about the larger school in that way. A primary school across this entire site would be an absolutely massive school. And I don't know, I mean, a sixth form entry school, which is certainly what is not necessary. But I think you could build in a similar footprint to Springfield, build up and more sensitively to the area, and have a 2 or 3 form entry and absolutely facilitate it. And modern building methods, modern building techniques, and have access to the park and a much larger park, which means that you provide those facilities for people in the area. And I think it was Senator Mezek that said, and others have said, this vision that we want to talk about, and I'm going to come back to the Constable Crowcroft's vision in his proposition in a moment, but that vision of having a school where children walk through parkland to their school that looks out on parkland, smack bang in the middle of the most built up area on Jersey. Not in St Helier, in Jersey. That's where the building's going, and it's happening now. And my concern over the park being used to give credence to even more building that area was summed up by the Constable of St Helier when he said the knock-on effects on future sites of not building this park. And that's a concern. We're in a strange position with this, because if this loses, then and we can support a park, and I still have the concerns about planning permissions that exist, but particularly with the change to the Assembly that may come, and if in my view, the wrong people are elected, we're going to get even more building in St Helier without any thought whatsoever, but let's not go on with that at the moment, sir. It's a real concern of mine. And I think when the Constable said, well, you know, we've got to think about future developments, there's a little clue there as to where we're going and why, another reason why this park might be supported for the wrong reasons. Okay, it cannot be the only green space in that area. We have to look wider than just that space. And if we can build more park in that land and have a school in the right place, that's fine. And I talked to the Constable and say, in terms of it being an election issue, I'm more than happy to knock on the doors in that area and talk to people about why I believe that's the case. And I say this about politics. I think there's 2 types of politics. You can either be a weather vane or you can be a signpost. I'm not a weather vane. I'm here to be a signpost and say to people, this is leadership and this is the way we should be going forward. And I believe this is the right thing to do, and these are the reasons to do it. And I think too often people are weather vanes. Oh, well, we think people think this, so we'll go with this, and we'll put some doubt in people's minds. And we never get anywhere. We don't move forward. And I say to the housing minister, I didn't understand what he said and his argument, to be honest. I don't think it was coherent in terms of what he was trying to do. And to just say it's a fantasy, I think given what we've had in terms of our government in the last few years and projects that they've produced, speaking of fantasy is quite ironic, because we have some fantasy projects which really aren't ever going to happen or shouldn't even happen. So I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure what to address with that. And Senator Moore, it's interesting for the Senator to be talking about densely packed. I'd say to her, so are the schools. The schools are densely packed. The children do not have space to run about. They do not have places to go to play. And building in the facility that we have will enable that. And in terms of saying, this is not simply about replacing this with pocket parks. This is about increasing green space in that area in St Helier in general and changing the building. So rather than just saying we're going to build and build and build and build and build in those areas, let's create some green spaces with it. And I do have concerns about that. And I would urge people to be signposts and not weather vanes. I think this might be popular. We might be able to put a candidate up in that area and just oppose this without thinking through the complexity of what this entails. This is not simple. And the simplest thing to do is to say, build a park, it's lovely, it's nice and green, you have more space to run about, it's great for the kids. Yes, of course it is. But what is the alternative for their schooling? Where are they going to school? And I say to the Constable of St Helier, where are they going to school? Where are children going to school? Is the Constable of St Helier really willing to say that the facilities we have for children in the centre of St Helier are good enough for them to have the best possible education they have? I'm afraid I know that they are not. And at my time in this assembly, and I wouldn't assume I'd be re-elected, I do my best here. I've been true to my word while I've been here, and I will continue to be true to my word. But whoever comes into the future, you've got to look at the facilities for those children because they are more important than us. Because they're the future of it. They'll be paying my pension. I think I've said this before, so I used to say to the children I teach, I want you to really well in your exams because you're paying my pension. I have to declare an interest, sir. It was always interesting for me. I want to see them massively highly paid so they pay their tax and they pay my pension. Of course they do. Anyway, I digress. A couple other people. Deputy Lewis, you're right about population. I agree. You need to address it, but unfortunately the population is being concentrated in the centre of St Helier. And that's the reality of what's going on. So we need to provide those critical infrastructure. And the most critical infrastructure is schooling. Schooling, health, of course it is. Deputy Doublé, I really hope I can convince Deputy Doublé to support this for the simple reason that the busing of children out of town schools, I don't think is a constructive thing to do. I think walking to school, I was surprised, and I may have got it wrong actually, but surprised to not see that importance of being able to walk to your local school. It reminds me of something Deputy Young said yesterday about his schooling in London. And I went to primary school in London. I went to George Lansbury School. And then it became Old Ford School, which was across the road from my house, smack bang in this middle of London by Roman Road. Yes, real East Ender, I know that. And one of the most wonderful things about that school was they built a green space in the school for these little London urchins to run about in. And I can still remember that. And it was an absolute pleasure to go to it. And that's what we need to be doing in the centre of our towns. Building schools where there's green spaces. I urge you to go to Springfield if you vote against this and explain to them why you wouldn't support it. And the choice of sending your children to private schools, yes, absolutely. It's a choice many make. But if you're choosing to send them because there's green spaces, then why aren't we building a school by a green space? And I'm going to reiterate, I do not believe it will be in the entire park area. There is the facility, and Deputy Lewis made a very good point about planning, and I think the Deputy of St Mary and the Deputy of St Martin made a point about planning. There is a process here. And if it comes back and you want to build a megalith of a school, I will be opposing it, ironically, in my own amendment. And I will be saying, no, it has to be done subtly with the right balance between green space and schooling. So that needs to happen. So I think I've covered everybody. But I just want to say to people, this is a protection. This is just simply saying you are not going to build on the park, and the only thing possible will be a primary school. And with the extension to the park as well. And I say to the residents in that area, please think carefully about this. Where are children going to go to school? What will happen if you have to bus your children out of that area? More traffic, more movement, there and back. More cars moving out of car parking spaces and trying to go back. Yes, you'll have a bit more space, but that's the only space you're going to have. Because we won't develop green space in other areas around the area, because developers won't have to develop green space. So the complexity of this, provision of schooling, the provision of more green space, and the provision of other green space are the things that need to come together. That's what needs to be coordinated. That's what needs a genuine plan. And that's why our politicians need to be signposted and not weather vanes. So I urge you today, don't be a weather vane, be a signposter, lead the way, and vote for what you know is right. Thank you, sir. I ask for the appel.
Thank you, Deputy. The appel has been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. Those joining the meeting via the Teams link are asked to cast their votes in the chat channel. And I invite the greffier to open the voting for members in the chamber. Four members have the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce the amendment has been adopted. 38 votes for, 8 votes contra.
Can we have the all of the names, please?
Yes.
Those voting for in the chamber: Senators Moore, Pallett and Mezek. The Conotabs of St Lawrence, St Bralard, Grouville, St Peter, St Juan, St Martin, St John, St Clement. Deputies Southern, Lewis, Tadier, Pinnell, St Martin, St Juan, St Mary, Young, Morel, Guida, La Hegara, Ayer, Ward, Pamplin and Gardner. Those voting for in the chat: Senator Lafondre, Deputy Pershar, Deputy Alves, Senator Ferguson, Senator Valois, Deputy Wickenden, the Conotab of St Saviour, the Deputy of St John, Deputy Ash, Deputy of St Peter, Deputy Truscott, and the Deputy of Trinity. Those voting contra in the chat: Senator Farnham, the Constable of Trinity, the Deputy of Grouville, Deputy Higgins, Deputy Labby, and the Constable of St Helier. And those voting contra in the chamber: Deputy Martin and Deputy Doublé.
The 64th amendment has been lodged by Senator Pallett. I'll ask the greffier to read the amendment.
After the words "the Draft Island Plan 2022-25, insert the words "except that within policy CI2, A. In the first paragraph, there should be inserted after 3 the following: 4. Within the site designated for a nursing facility, field MN688, St Martin. B. In the second paragraph, after the words "a proven island," there should be inserted the words "or parish specific." C. In the second paragraph, replace subparagraph A with the following: A. The development is essential to delivery and continuation of health and social care services. including where there is a specific local need arising within a parish and which cannot reasonably be met through alternative sites, service delivery arrangements, or co-location with other services in a suitable location. And D, in the second paragraph, subparagraph B, after the word spatial strategy, there should be inserted the words and any parish-specific needs. And E, the draft Island Plan 2022 to 25 should be further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent to the adoption of A to E.
Senator Palace.
Thank you, sir. I want to say from the outset that this is it's a privately owned site and the development will be a private development. Both Jersey's overall population and the percentage of its population that are aged over 65 are rising. By 2036, the island's population, or 1 in 5 of the island's population, will be aged over 65, compared with 17% now. This will equate to over 28,000 senior citizens on the island, or a 57% increase on the existing number in a little over 15 years' time. The change in demographic brings significant challenges to the island in the future, including housing and catering for the needs of the senior population, ensuring the provision of suitable residential care and non-acute bed space, ensuring the provision of adequate trained medical and care sector staff, including GPs, care workers, care officers and nurses, and providing services and facilities tailored to suit the needs of the senior population, especially those that help to mitigate and delay the impact of age-related illnesses such as dementia, Alzheimer's, and mobility-restricting illnesses by using social and physical activities in purpose-built accommodation. Jersey's challenge in meeting these needs is complicated further by several constraints that the island must work with. Firstly, Jersey has a limited landmass within which it must accommodate all of its future needs. Therefore, spatial efficiency and utilisation of underused space for purposeful needs is paramount. Secondly, the island has a given working population at any time. This working population is required to generate sufficient revenues in order to both ensure the island's households live prosperously and support the island's public services through generation of tax and social security contributions. Jersey therefore needs to ensure its industries and employing organisations are fully utilised at all times. Thirdly, Jersey's population has high expectations for and a great interest in the built environment, and private sector service providers. The public will place great scrutiny on any next steps, and this will result in rigorous challenge of emerging proposals. Jersey must commit to making sure it does indeed look after all of its societal needs. Jersey simply cannot walk away or banish the needs of those that it cannot provide for and expect other jurisdictions to cater for these requirements. All of the island, including the government and the parishes and all of its residents, must play their part and accept responsibility to provide for all members of its society, now and in the future, regardless of their age or health. Do nothing and hope the challenge will fade away is no longer an available option. With Jersey's senior age 65 and over population, as I say, set to rise by 57%, the island needs to focus its attention on delivering facilities that will help meet the demand for senior living, including residential care facilities. The Government of Jersey's proposed Jersey Care model envisages the greater use of private sector living, senior living bed space to deliver care services from within the community at its point of need. The impact of the recent COVID-19 pandemic will also doubtless put further strain on the government's funding of essential capital projects in the future. The development of Field 6A8 in St Martin's give the parish of St Martin's and its close community an opportunity to exist with the island meeting these challenges. It's at no cost to the parish or to the taxpayer. From its present situation as underutilised green zone land, this field could be developed into a purpose-built residential care home. The facility will be designed to accord with all the mandatory and statutory regulations and the principles of a contemporary, high-quality residential care home. If approved, the development will be funded and developed by private sector companies and delivered by local designers and a local building contractor. The aims of all investment, both upfront and during the operation of the facility, will be to source with maximum possible positive local impact. The development will deliver not only much needed but also much desired modern purpose-built senior living care accommodation, which will be constructed to a high standard. The focus on the operation will centre on ensuring the needs of the residents, whatever their health, are individually catered for. The government recognises this challenge and is seeking to address some of the issues that it presents within its proposed Jersey care model healthcare system that, when implemented, will replace the present public health service in Jersey. The Jersey care model envisions a future where government, in cooperation with the independent sector, and I'm quoting, expands the use of supported living, domiciliary care, daycare, and assisted technologies as alternatives to residential accommodation, focusing on rehabilitation and independent living. The Jersey care model is premised on a base assumption that the island as a whole, including private, public and third sector organisations, must work together to meet the health and well-being challenges the island faces in the future. The government is therefore expecting and actively encouraging private sector providers to assist with offering non-acute and residential care home facilities that will provide wraparound care for seniors in the future. The Jersey care model also wants more care service to be provided as close to home as possible, thereby dispensing with the need for the government to provide them directly as a cost to the taxpayer and ensuring the recipients of the care are catered for within the community. Fundamentally, though, however, the Jersey care model assumes that care will be delivered in a way that seeks to preserve and protect the independence of the recipient. Medical professionals believe that this is the best way of helping to maintain the dignity and self-esteem of the recipient and sustained cordiality amongst society through continued inclusion. Inclusivity and involvement are also key factors associated with delaying the onset of complicated medical conditions amongst the senior population. Future care of the elderly will therefore be delivered more in the community, in new facilities that cater for a wide range of seniors requiring tailored support programs for each resident. The facilities will need to be purpose-built and designed for optimal efficiency in operation in order to ensure their sustenance and reduce the costs to businesses that operate them. Currently, around half of Jersey's population has at least one of 40 long-term health conditions, with older people often having complex health needs to manage. This in turn requires more care and treatment. As the population profile continues to age, the growing need for care and treatment could put our health system under significant strain if work is not done to address where and how we provide accessible and sustainable healthcare services. The implementation of the Jersey care model will lead to a significant change in how people engage and experience the full spectrum of health and social care services in Jersey. And this change is to take place not only in service delivery, but also in a physical sense, with new and changing demands upon healthcare infrastructure. For those looking at the site, St Martin's Village lies to the east, approximately 1 kilometre away. This particular care home would serve the northeastern parishes of Trinity, St Martin's, Grouville and Northern St Saviour's, where there is under provision for care facilities at the current time. In terms of connectivity, a cycle and walking track from field MN688 has been discussed with relevant landowners and the parish of St Martin's, which will provide a route to St Martin's Village for pedestrians and cyclists which is only 4 fields away. There are bus stops within 100 metres of the site, and a bus stop could be provided in a recess to the side of field M688. All services are on site. Any care home provided on field MN688 would be within convenient travelling distances for the parishes of Trinity, St Martin's, Grouville and the northern end of St Saviour's, without having to travel to other parts of the island or to St Helier. Together, these parishes represent approximately 25% of the island's population. So what will the completed development deliver? I think I've got a few things here, but the first one is the one thing that sticks out with me, and that's worry-free living. Social engagement is crucial to later living, as continued activity and human interaction provides both long-term mental acuity and helps combat the risk of isolation and loneliness. Communal and shared spaces provide neighbourly interaction and provide space for informed gatherings, planned events and activities. There are others. I'm not going to go through these because I think they will come out in another section that I'm going to cover in a second. What I do want to mention is, because I know people will say this is another agricultural field. It is. The Jersey Farmers Union have rated it as a 3. And I'm not going to say it's any less important than anything else to agriculture without getting castigated, but that's the words that have been used by the JFU. And it scored relatively highly in terms of suitability, landscape, existing use, and we believe unfairly in terms of the spatial score. Nevertheless, it scored 15, which is a relatively high score. I just want to finally turn to the Minister's comments. Within his comments, he states that the care model is clear that it seeks to move away from a culture of institutional care. I think it's important that as we reach later life, that we have an opportunity to choose where we live our later years, and there needs to be a balance in what is offered. Certainly this will offer more choice to those that need care and supervised care. I was just thinking about this the other day. For those that live on their own as a single person, there is a risk of isolation. And although some people are quite happy to live on their own, supported, there are others that do need that company, do need that support. And this would offer increased opportunities within that sector. Isolation comes with all sorts of risks to mental health, risks also to physical health if you're living on your own in later life. So I think there do need to be choices. There's a word I don't particularly like, and that is institutional or institutionalized. I'm not sure what that means, because I think it's got a dark history, and it's not a word that I think should be used when considering residential care. I'm sure, and I would hope, that the Constable St Brellards, when I mentioned Mesl St Brellards, would agree that I wouldn't consider that to be institutionalised care. If it is, then I'm quite happy to live in institutionalised care when I get older. It is a warm, welcoming, friendly residential home where people lead full lives, lead very sociable lives. There's a lot of interaction between both staff and residents, and it is for anybody that's visited there, it is a joy to visit, and it's a joy to talk to the residents that are there. There is a need, I think, to think forward. This development, if this field is passed, won't happen overnight. It will take several years to put into place. And as I say, I think the need in terms of the numbers that we, increased numbers of elderly senior citizens we're going to have over the next 15 years, I think does prove the need for new facilities, new improved facilities that can provide support to those that are in later life. So I think the strategic need is proven. Does there maybe need to be more work on that need? Possibly, but I think that's work that can be done. But I think to rezone this site gives the opportunity, I think, to have it in the plan and, if necessary, can be used. The other comment that I think is worth commenting on is this site being remote from local services considered to be wholly appropriate for a nursing home. I just thought I'd have a look at where all the other nursing homes in Jersey are sited. And we know there are quite a number, but I'm just going to mention a few. The Hull Care Home, Ronceret Care Home, that's actually opposite this site. Lakeside Care Home, Highlands Care Home in St Saviour's, Lahume Care Home in Gorey, and the last two in particular, Le Cherrier at St Peter's and Chevelle Rock at Bully Bay. Well, if the site at St Martin's is remote, I don't know what you'd call the ones at Chevelle Rock and Le Cherrier. They all function well as residential homes. I'm sure the people that live within them are very happy with the accommodation and are happy that they are living in a way that suits their needs at that particular time in life. I get where the minister's coming from about remote, but it's been clear from those that want to develop this care home that they do want it to integrate into St Martin's life, integrate into the community, integrate into St Martin's Village Centre, and very much be part of life within that parish, and also support other parishes that are nearby. I'm looking at the time, sir. I'm going to stop now. I hope members can support this. It's the only one around hospital facilities that is within the plan. I think we do need to be forward-thinking and look forward as to some of the needs we may require in the future, and support this. But I'll be interested in members' comments. But like I say, I'm hoping members can support this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Is the amendment seconded? Thank you.
Point of clarification.
Point of clarification. Will you accept a point of clarification, Senator?
I'll do my best, sir, but no doubt Deputy Morell's going to come with something very technical.
Well, we'll soon find out.
No, not at all. Thank you, Senator. It was just, in his speech, the Senator referred to one particular private developer. Is this an extension of the Ronceret Care Home opposite? Is that the private developer? And also, how do we know that that private developer is the best one, if you know what I mean? Or could it be open to a tender or something?
So it's not connected to Ronceret, the one across the road. It's the owner of the field has been working with specialists in the field, and also I'll be up front. Selby Care Home have been interested in developing it, although that's not been decided yet, but they've shown some interest in it.
Conrad, have you seen clarification, or do you wish to speak?
Oh no, I was just putting my light on to speak, sir.
Thank you very much. I'll come to you after the Minister. Minister.
Thank you, sir. We have here an amendment to a policy CI2, which seeks to set out a set of planning parameters for how planning applications for healthcare facilities, for extended health and care facilities, will be dealt with. And there is nowhere in there that lists specific sites. It's a set of policy planning rules, because, I mean, the Senator lists a number of care homes. There are obviously a very large number in the island. The figures that I was given, there's approximately, I think, 1,000 spaces in current care homes, and he is right that there is a very, very high level of occupation I think the last lot of numbers I was given were about 24 vacancies. But the strange thing is that despite that, and our ageing community, the expert information which I've been given by the Health Minister's team, because I'm not expert in this field, nor the planning officers. We rely entirely on our experts in the field to give us advice. And of course, I did publish that way back in, I think it was August, in a document, in that big fat document that I submitted to the planning inspector. And this was a section called SP2. And I'll read a couple of bits from it. But basically, the guts of it is, and this is the question, are the changes that the Senator proposes to the policies, are they consistent with the approach that we're trying to do to increase independent living and try and help people in ageing communities maintain independent living, or are they going in the reverse direction? And so I think what we have here is a plan, and what the amendment is, basically in two kind of parts. One part of it says that we need to focus on parish needs, parish-specific need. I thought we were trying to deal with the special needs of people in the the highest level of dependency on an island-wide basis, because that is obviously a crucial thing. And I draw a clear distinction here between the support which the Assembly has given already to the parish of St Martin for a very significant extension to over 55 residential homes under what we called supported living. And that was sensible. I only abstained because I thought it raised issues of rezoning agricultural land, and this was a very isolated site. But nonetheless, I did accept the argument that such a facility where people get the support to maintain independent living in later years is a good thing, because it ultimately reduces the amount of people that have to make that awful decision finally to go into long-term care. And of course, when one looks at the, so here we've got, I can't help feeling this would have been better, in fact, coming forward as a planning application, because really we've got a map on the back of it that says, here it is, it's got a name with a developer on it, LV Care. Shows a layout. Now my view is, all the advice I got, the planning system would be perfectly capable of dealing with this as a planning application. And the Senator says, well, there's the only one. Well, of course, because nobody else has done that. So I think the right thing to do, because the planning policies can work. And policy CI2 does set out the facilities that where there are exceptional circumstances and where there is a proven need, where it can be demonstrated, then permission will be given. And I think, so and of course that, it wasn't just me thinking that what the proposal here is really doesn't fit the model that we're seeking to achieve in how we look after older people. What it says is the proposal, that's the one in the amendment, would provide local nursing home and dementia care. Is dementia care a parish-based specific, or are we talking specialist facilities? And now I've asked the Health Minister to speak later, and I'm sure he'll give us some guidance of where the boundaries are. But when we were considering this, I'm going to read a couple of parts from the advice that I was given, that I published. I referred to my SP2 document. It seeks that it is important, this is the experts' advice, social workers' advice, it is important to keep elderly people connected and independent at home as long as possible, to avoid early admission to a care home. It says, often loneliness and inability to cook or look after their home, i.e. cleaning and so on, are contributing reasons for choosing a care home. But these should be, the advice should be addressed differently. For example, community integration and lunch clubs, home care and cleaning services. And of course these services, they say, should be the focus before providing care home solutions. And so one of the things we're trying to do is to increase the domiciliary home care market to enable people to stay independently at home. And if we are, if we're putting all our funds and finances and effort into building more, dementia homes, this may act to disincentivize the market. Because there's no question, care homes are hugely lucrative ventures. And I would personally argue, with my financial hat on, that as of an island, what are the best choices to put the money into domiciliary care and trying to support people in the community, or is it best to pump all the money into promoting care? Now, where there are needs that are proven, it doesn't need an amendment to this policy. It doesn't need it. It can be dealt with through the planning system. So it isn't, people often interpret these policies as a block. Well, it means that people have got to go through hoops. They've got to present their cases, perhaps rather more than sticking a drawing on the back of and put it in as an appendix. Frankly, this needs to go through the planning system. So it also, of course, is a zoning. This is an agricultural field. It's a zoning. I think members should be really careful about zoning a field in these circumstances for what is I believe, a commercial venture. So I'm sorry to be quite so blunt, but I think one has to spell it out. So it's really important that the policies we have, I think, are right for the whole line of approach. And we're early in this journey, if you like, of moving towards trying to do more independent care. I mean, it is a conundrum. We know that people end up in care homes, many prematurely, and somehow or other we can't find the ways of giving that support. But I think that's where the policies, the direction the island plan should have. And if we modify this policy now, I think what we'll be getting is a whole lot of others. And now I've also asked, and I think one of the things, if I may read the conclusion, it says here, care home beds have been stable over the last 10 years, and it is reasonable to assume, this is the social workers expert, that any near-term increase in demand will be moderate. And it is expected that such increase in demand will be met through the redevelopment of lands within the existing built-up areas, such as the development of old hotel stocks. And I recently asked the planning officers as well that where we have those facilities outside the built-up area, we should also be looking favourably on changes of use. Because existing buildings, and so we go back to the issue about rezoning land for things or whether we can reuse. And of course, but the beauty of sites within the built areas are in close proximity to community facilities. And really they're better to take. And so I think what they're saying, in the absence of evidence to support significant demand, then I'm advised that there is, do not consider to be sufficient evidence to rezone land in the countryside for the purpose in the plan. Had the evidence been different, then there would have been proposals in there for such. And so, I'm sorry, I think I've got to put it out we've had a really big debate about agricultural land, and I think the bar is high here. I think it was right to go with the over 55s accommodation, but for where I'm having a real struggle is that what is providing a kind of a more broader-based, specialised care, of dementia care, of nursing care, that this is the right place for it. Staff would have to travel there. Therefore, I presume it would have to be 24-hour care. So you got, you know, day and night, 7 days a week. Is the bus, does it go there all the time or what? I don't know. So I think there are real implications about going with these proposals, and I can't recommend it to the Assembly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Conatawa St Martin.
Thank you, sir. There is a process that planning applications should follow, and I think that this amendment should have gone through that proper planning process and not been included in the draft island plan, draft bridging island plan. It would also have been helpful if the Senator had spoken to the parish about this amendment, but here we are. The potential path included with this amendment is a red herring. A safe path is something which the parish has been looking at and working on, and ideally we'd like to bring a safe path through the fields to the village green, the centre of St Martin, to fruition. A path is not dependent on building a care home. Having said all this, it may sound strange to say that I would like to be able to support this amendment, and will if it can be guaranteed that this home would be solely for dementia patients, as is rumoured, or at least dementia would take up a large percentage of the home. But looking at the plans, it does not appear to. I would like to be convinced and assured. I do wholeheartedly believe and know firsthand that the island desperately needs more care beds, especially more specialised care beds and facilities. The island is critically short of specialised care beds at the moment. We, the parish, were told recently, and this is within the last 2 weeks, by health professionals in a government department, that there are simply no suitable beds in the island. And this is from, well, 2 parishioners that we have who desperately need to be in a care facility. Right now we have parishioners, islanders, who desperately need to be cared for appropriately and with dignity. The Minister has just mentioned sheltered housing. And sheltered housing really is wonderful if you're not suffering from dementia and desperately need 24-hour care. Sadly, some of the residents become too ill to stay in sheltered housing and need specialised care, and sadly, we in the parish know this only too well and are not in a position to be able to support in as much as with 24-hour care and as much as we'd like to. To support what I've just said, here are some quotes from parishioners from St Martin and from Grouville who have family members suffering from dementia. These have been said to me in the last 10 days. There is certainly a severe shortage of nursing home beds and staff available. Another one. We are trying to place my mother, who has dementia, into a home, but there are no places available, nor is there care staff available at care agencies to meet her needs at home. Yet another one. More nursing beds are definitely needed. Another one. When I see some of the people who are in sheltered housing who do actually need 24-hour care, there definitely is a desperate shortage. Yet another one. No beds. What are we to do? There is no suitable care. Another one. The need for care at residential homes is becoming critical. At a Dementia Jersey meeting, the talk was the woeful lack of suitable care facilities. As the amendment says, a dementia home would serve the needs of our neighbouring parishes, Trinity, St Saviour and Grouville, and the field is not highly rated for agriculture, according to the Jersey Farmers Union. I've really been torn on this, and as I've said, we in the island, not just St Martin, have a desperate, critical need for a dedicated dementia unit. As the amendment says, a care home on this site would serve, as I've just said, serve the needs of our neighbouring parishes. I would appreciate the Senator expand on whether this will purely be for dementia patients, and if not, what percentage of those suffering from this cruel illness of dementia will be catered for. I will be listening to the debate and to the Senator's summing up with great interest. I see the need daily, and the need for appropriate residential care facilities. The needs in the island at the moment is absolutely critical. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Conatawa. Deputy Labby.
Well, so I'm very pleased to that the Environment Minister said what he did, because I was sitting here listening to Senator Pallett's speech, thinking I was back on the planning committee. This is a planning application, pure and simple, but we're determining an application and only hearing from one party, the applicant. We have absolutely no idea, because there's been no site notice, we have no idea the strength of any objection locally to this. We have not the benefit of all the opinions of the statutory consultees that accompany planning applications. It's been said before, and it'll be said again, that the State Assembly is not the place to determine planning applications. And this certainly is unsafe. So I'm afraid I will not be supporting it.
Thank you, Deputy. Does anyone wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy St. One.
Sir, could I propose the adjournment at this stage, because I would like to speak, but maybe a little longer than 5 minutes?
The adjournment is proposed. Adjournment seconded.
Yes, sir.
Anyone wish to speak on the adjournment? No. State stands adjourned until 2:15.